Chapter 191, The First Battle of the Yin Fire Bead. Zhang Hao was sliced in two by the Ice Dragon Sword Essence. Zuo couldn't suppress his injuries anymore and spat out another mouthful of blood. That amazing Ice Dragon Sword Essence had not been cast by him directly, but through him using countless sword energies to construct it. The copycat sword essence was not very pure, but the power was not something Zuo could reach himself. The sword energies of Wukong Flag came from Jindan experts and were extraordinary. Already on the last of his strength, Zhang Hao did not muster a response to the sword strike. Zuo wiped the blood from his mouth. His body was deathly tired. Using the sword formation while injured was his limit. He grinned, a bit of madness flashed through his eyes. So what if he was Ningmai? Fight with Ge'll kill you. Glancing at the corpse on the ground, Zuo thought for a moment and then took it into his ring. This guy probably had a lot of good things. However, it wasn't time to view his spoils, Zuo thought regretfully. He must first resolve the ball of light. Zhang Hao's sword energy and the young fiendish hard lightning had merged into a ball of light. He really did not understand it. However, he didn't have the time to ponder it. If this thing exploded, all of Desolate Wood Reef would probably be flattened. The ball of light was like a miniature sun. Zuo could clearly sense the terrifying Ling power contained inside. His little heart jerked and beat rapidly. He hurriedly asked Pu what to do with this. Run. Pu Yao's response did not contain anything unnecessary. He sighed helplessly, I'm too weak now, and can't even deal with a little thing like this. He sounded very reflective. Even Pu Yao couldn't deal with it. Zuo's heart froze, his mouth volleying, aren't you a Sky Yao? Pu Yao smirked, it's not there are no ways, there just aren't any you could use. Zuo paused. Did he really have to run? But on this vast expanse of ocean, where could he run? Even if he had just killed Zhang Hao, the other side still had 4 more Ningmai. He definitely would not be able to escape. No, there had to be a way. There definitely had to be a way. Zuo said to himself. The miniature sun shook slightly. Even the ripples it gave off was frightening. The closer he went, the more Zuo's heart shook. Inside was a brutal Ling power that could explode at any time. Such a waste of Ling power. Zuo wanted to criticize Zhang Hao's wastefulness. This absurd thought suddenly turned to a stroke of lightning. Ling power. This light ball contained Ling power and hard lightning. Wasn't this an enormous Jingshi? Except this Jingshi was slightly dangerous. He opened his eyes as he had a daring idea. The trembling of the miniature sun seemed to increase. It was becoming less stable. Zuo's heart shook. The time did not allow him to think more. The idea he just had was bold, but at least he could see hope. Different materials appeared on his hands, his speed at maximum. He wanted to have a few extra pairs of hands as he furiously set up formations. The expressions of the Black Wind bandits were both shocked and suspicious. They all stopped moving. The head's presence had completely disappeared. After that earth-shaking impact, head's presence had completely disappeared. Had the head been killed? This absurd idea was like a poisonous viper that slowly corroded their remaining courage. The big formation still existed. If the head had won, the formation definitely would have broken. Head's presence had disappeared, but the big formation was still present. Realizing that Zhang Hao was in trouble, every person's first response was to go give aid. Yet, knowing that Zhang Hao had been killed in battle, their first response was flee. In the blink of an eye, Zuo had finished setting up a formation. What he set up was a 4-turn fire formation, one that used the light ball as a replacement for Jingshi. This idea was incredibly daring. The light ball was extremely unstable and could explode at any time. From any perspective, this idea was preposterous. It might have been the stimulation of danger that caused Suomo's thoughts to be usually clear. He swept the fire formation quickly. No mistakes. He released a breath and then his eyes became serious. Reaching out with his right hand, he started to draw in space. The second move of Little Thousand Leaf Hands, Leaf Birth. In empty space, a green character of light took form. Immediately, the character shattered and the green pieces of broken light merged into the fire formation. The green pieces of light were like seeds which rapidly germinated and grew. In the blink of an eye, the fire formation was crowded with patches of green leaves. What was miraculous was that the unstable ball of light seemed to become more stable, not giving off the feeling of danger any longer. Suomo finally released a breath. The fire formation started to turn. The restless Ling power from the light ball was absorbed by the leaves, and turned to an endless and continuous steady flow of Ling power. Suomo wiped the sweat off his head. He had been extremely nervous just now. If he had made the smallest mistake, this close to the ball of light, not even ashes would remain of him. Even Puyao hadn't dared to disturb him then. It was the first time he used Little Thousand Leaf Hands with formations. From the present result, it seemed he had succeeded. After learning Void Pass, Suomo had learned Leaf Birth. In Suomo's mind, Leaf Birth had been an extremely useless spell. Its only effect was to regulate chaotic flows of Ling power. If he could regulate the Ling power of his opponent, then it meant he could resolve the other's attack. It was a pity that this Leaf Birth could only be used on the Ling power existing in the world and did not belong to anything. The Ling power of the light ball came from Zhang Hao, but Zhang Hao was dead, so this connection had disappeared, making it orphaned Ling power. Suomo's young fiendish hard lightning was just taking and using Ling power that existed in the environment. Suomo had never expected that the most useless move of the three moves of Little Thousand Leaf Hands would save his life. Killing a strong enemy, staying alive after a tribulation, the joy of success, and the fear. Several emotions were tied together, the feeling was indescribable. The bright red lines of fire crossed in the air. While heat rolled away from it, Suomo's heart suddenly moved and he had another idea. Why didn't he use the opportunity to temper the Buddha sound hoop? The Buddha sound hoop was almost complete. If it could be successfully tempered, then power of the big formation would definitely increase. Looking at the bright orange moon, it might have been killing Zhang Hao or merging Little Thousand Leaf Hands with formations, but his confidence had grown. Beckoning with his hand, the Buddha sound hoop flew into the fire formation. The bright red fire was like a furious wild beast continuously gnawing on the copper hoop. Suomo glanced at it and shook his head. The grade of the flame that was in the fire formation was too low. The grade of the Buddha sound hoop was not low and it was hard to temper. He suddenly thought of the golden crow fire he possessed and face-palmed. He was too dumb to have forgotten about such a good thing. The golden crow fire was the finest of fourth-grade flames and it had a very beneficial quality of being able to easily merge to other flames. The price of golden crow fire wasn't low, but Suomo knew how to create it and naturally would not be frugal. He threw 9 mini boxes into the formation. As expected, the power of the fire formation increased with the addition of 9 wisps of golden crow fire. A hint of pure gold appeared in the red fire. The Buddha sound hoop which had been still finally showed signs of finishing tempering. The rest required time. Suomo looked closely for a while and made sure there wouldn't be any problems before he turned to leave. He shoved a large handful of Ling Dan into his mouth. The Ling power inside his body shook. However, Suomo still could feel the weakness from the heavy damage to his body under the fullness of his Ling power. It was not wise to use medicinal power to suppress wounds. However, the battle was far from finished. He knew it was harmful to his body but still did it. Lilith Pagoda was very skilled at controlling the Sky Ring Moon Chime formation. However, those in the formation were not average people. Up until now, the greatest damage that Lil Pagoda had done to the other side was the series of attacks it had done when Zhang Hao and Zuemo had clashed. Other than that, it had not achieved any results. None of the remaining 4 Ningmai had been injured. Zuemo was connected to Lil Pagoda and so he knew the situation inside the formation. He set his target on Zuohan. With the guidance of Lil Pagoda, he could easily find Zuohan's position. Zuohan's figure was concealed inside a rainbow cloud of poison. When the micro-void arrow hit the poisonous mist, it did not have any effect. Zuemo wasn't stupid enough to touch the poisonous mist. If he accidentally touched it, relying on the second-grade detoxification dan he had made was akin to seeking death. However, in the eyes of Zuemo who had just killed Zhang Hao, the power of this guy who used poison was much lower than Zhang Hao. Silently sneaking near Zuohan, Yin fire bead appeared in Zuemo's hand. He usually did not dare to use the Yin fire bead. This thing was incredibly powerful, but if it was exposed, the trouble it would bring would be far beyond what he could deal with. But right now, he didn't have to worry about this problem. The entire desolate wood reef was concealed by the sky ring moon chime formation. People outside could not see a thing, and people inside were separated by illusory formations. It was definitely a good chance to use the Yin fire bead. Originally, he had planned to use it in Zhang Hao. But Zhang Hao had detected him coming closer, so the first battle of this Yin fire bead landed on Zuohan. Zuohan was completely ignorant that Zuemo had already come close to him. His heart was insecure. The other people were still doubtful, but he was almost certain that the head was already dead. In the middle of the wilderness, he felt the surroundings were cold. Even with the protection of the poison mist, he couldn't feel a hint of warmth. The only thing that reassured him was the orange moon in the sky had become much dimmer. The formation probably could not be maintained for much longer. Up until now, he had not encountered one other person. His expression changed. It came again. Ding ding ding. 3 invisible sound arrows entered the poisonous mist. Just like the previous times, he lightly channeled Ling power. The poisonous mist flowed strangely and the 3 sound arrows disappeared. The other was always very sudden in sending sound arrows. However, his poisonous mist was the perfect counter of straightforward spells. Ding ding ding. A storm of sound arrows shot at him without warning. Zuohan was very calm. The poisonous mist slowly flowed around him. The sound arrows that entered the mist seemed to have sunk into quicksand, rapidly disappearing. A small cold smile suddenly floated into his dark face. It was useless. Suddenly, he detected a small object had hit his poisonous mist. It wasn't a sound arrow. His expression abruptly changed. He instantly reacted. The storm of sound arrows had been to provide a cover for this little object. Damn it! The outside layer of the poisonous mist was dyed a bone white. Coldness followed the white color as it spread with astonishing speed. Terrified, Zuohan didn't have the time to even make a response. The coldness blew through his body like the wind. He froze to his spot, his body a frozen and eerie white statue, frightened expression shown to all. Chapter 192, Buddha Sound Hoop. Zuohan crumbled away in the wind, only leaving behind a few talismans. The poisonous fan and mist had been frozen into ice by the Yin fire bead. Despite this, Zuemo didn't feel it a pity. That poison fan was not very endearing, and the glow of the remaining talismans were very good. It was a pity there wasn't the time to admire them one by one, so Zuemo threw it all into his ring. Zuemo sighed. What he sighed at was not the power of the Yin fire bead, but the maxim, "We are sword shio, whatever we need we will take it with our sword," that the sect leader and others always said. Battle was truly one of the fastest ways to gather wealth. He had just killed 2 Ningmai, and the talismans and Jingshi he received were enough for him to feel his wallet swell up. With the powerful Yin fire bead as his support and the temptation of extreme wealth, Zhuo Mo's eyes turned red. His gaze as he turned on the other Xianxia was like he was staring at a delicious and fat sheep. So much Jingshi. At the same time, a Buddha sound rang out. A bright gold light appeared inside the formation and headed for the clouds. Joy came only Zhuo Mo's face. The tempering of the Buddha sound hoop was complete. The Buddha sound hoop had turned from red to gold and did not feel like copper but a hoop of gold. Lightning occasionally flashed across the golden hoop. Had the hard lightning from the ball of light also been absorbed by the Buddha sound hoop? Zhuo Mo was overjoyed. Each time the lightning flashed, the Buddha sound hoop would sound out with a deep and dignified ring. At this time, the environment of the sky ring moon chime formation suddenly changed. A bright sun hung high up in the sky, warm golden light falling down. The thin strands that fell down were dyed gold. The rings of light on the gold wire turned from a clear moon color to gold. The serenity of before was swept away. The feeling of the present formation was like standing under the sun, destroying all evil. The remaining Black Wind bandits felt something completely different. Before it was like they were in the wilderness, scary and dark. Now, they stood before a burning sun. They had moved from a cold wilderness to a hot and burning desert. When touched by the ripples of Buddha sounds, those with weaker minds easily lost all of their motivation. The Black Wind bandits inside the formation were all cruel people who lived on a knife's edge. Their minds were not so weak, but they felt wave after wave of pressure. The previous sky ring moon chime formation made people wary of the sudden ambushes. The present formation demanded that they channel Ling power at all times to defend against the Buddha sounds. The offensive power of the formation was stronger now. No wonder Zhuo Mo was so happy. It was like someone delivered a pillow to him just when he wanted to nap. With the Yin fire bead and the completely transformed new formation, his chances of victory had risen against this group of bandits. Zhuo Mo quickly changed ideas. He had planned to wound as many as possible. Now, he decided to not let even one of them go. Each one was so much Jingshi. These criminals whose hands were soaked in blood, let Ji release you from your mortal coil. Zhuo Mo thought righteously. At this time, Zhuo Mo was like an experienced hunter. He wasn't in a hurry to pull close the net. His consciousness was connected to Lil Pagoda. He slowly went through all the changes in the new formation. The changes of the Buddha sound hoop were so drastic even he needed to accustom himself. The Black Wind bandits inside the formation started to panic. The head's presence had disappeared, his status unknown. After landing inside the formation, they had become like a crowd of flies, not knowing what to do. The new formation increased the pressure on them. The sounds that permeated everywhere needed to be fended off with Ling power, further increasing their consumption. They were not greenhorns. What they were most afraid of was situations like this when they needed to keep using Ling power. On the battlefield, Ling power was the greatest support of a Xianxia. An experienced Xianxia would carefully control the consumption of their Ling power. Lil Pagoda really lived up to being a soul-tethered talisman. The new changes of the Buddha sound hoop flowed through Zhuo Mo's mind. Zhuo Mo instinctively praised it and hadn't expected a joyful emotion to pass on to him from Lil Pagoda. Zhuo Mo first stilled and then was stunned. Did Lil Pagoda really have its own emotions and thoughts? The formation process of Lil Pagoda had been very mysterious. Zhuo Mo still felt there were many impossible places even now, but in his eyes Lil Pagoda was just a talisman. It originated from his consciousness and was connected to his mind. Usually, Lil Pagoda would frequently reveal a personality, but Zhuo Mo only felt it only a rudimentary intelligence. He had never thought that Lil Pagoda would really have his own sense of self. When a talisman developed its own sense of self, it was called Ling cognition. The thought that came from Lil Pagoda made Zhuo Mo realize that Lil Tower had Ling cognition. Heavens! How was it possible? Any talismans that could have Ling cognition were the finest and greatest talismans without an exception. Xuemo felt that he was very lucky that he had a soul-tethered talisman and had stumbled into a pile of jingsha. A soul-tethered talisman that had Ling cognition. Oh! The sudden good fortune made Xuemo vibrate in excitement. His eyes glowed as he looked at Lil Pagoda as though he wanted to shove Lil Pagoda into his mouth. Lil Pagoda instantly shrank back timidly, the 5 levels of its body shaking. Come, good son, let daddy take a good look at you. Xuemo drooled as he beckoned at Lil Pagoda, his expression unspeakably wretched. Lil Pagoda could be considered to be half a son of his. Its Ling cognition came from his consciousness. Lil Pagoda's body shrunk into a ball and trembled. After closely examining for a while, he could not see anything. Helplessly, he could only release Lil Pagoda. He pondered that he needed to take the time sometime to recall how he had forged Lil Pagoda. He dreamed of himself surrounded by light, a procession of soul-tethered Ling cognition talismans that did not end behind him. It would be amazing. He would only steal from wandering bandits. Anyone that would resist, all the soul-tethered talismans would bang down on their heads. Fantasizing about himself grandly sweeping all directions, something suddenly hit his waist. Looking down, he found it was Lil Pagoda. Xuemo refocused and wiped the saliva off the corner of his mouth. Lil Pagoda was reminding him the wandering bandits wanted to flee. Flee? Xuemo snickered coldly. Before, he had still been wary. Now, this remaining bunch of wandering bandits were just meat on the chopping board. The Buddha sound hoop had risen to 4th grade previously. The tempering this time had not increased its grade, but the power had risen. It had fire, sound, and lightning. The fire was the golden crow fire that could rank in the top 10 of 4th grade fire. The lightning was 4th grade Yang Fiend hard lightning. The only regret would probably be the Buddha sound formation carved on the hoop, it was only 3rd grade. Otherwise, this Buddha sound hoop would definitely be a rare top-level 4th grade talisman. But even so, the present Buddha sound hoop definitely could be an upper-level 4th grade talisman. After talismans reached the 4th level, due to the increase in power, they needed to be divided even further. 4th grade talismans, the highest were the top level, they were the most outstanding 4th grade talismans. Coming down, it was the upper, intermediate, and lower levels. However, talismans that were soul-tethered and had Ling cognition like Lil Pagoda were above the top level. The upper 4th grade Buddha sound hoop, adding on the soul-tethered talisman Lil Pagoda that had Ling cognition, the Yin fire bead that could instantly kill Ningmai, and the 3rd grade seal soldier that Xuemo had not used yet. Xuemo's confidence rose. He discovered that he had so many killing moves. Such a good chance, would Xuemo let these black wind bandits escape? Lil Pagoda flew into the sky, once again taking control of the big formation. The light illusions of the big formation changed. The Buddha sound hoop slightly vibrated, waves of sound passing outwards like water. Inside the formation, the black wind bandits felt the scenery changing. The pressure that had been somewhat ethereal before became strong. Calls rang out in their ears, a strong feeling of numbness made them unconsciously stop moving, like there was a voice muttering in their minds, "Sleep, just sleep for a while." Their eyelids were strangely heavy, the weariness disappearing from their hearts. Their hearts gradually became calm, the desire for sleep increasingly strong. The black wind bandits were very experienced. Pushing away their fright, they could only speed up the circulation of their Ling power to fend against the sound. They finally realized the longer it dragged, the more disadvantageous it was for them. They all sent their killing moves at almost the same time. Numerous sword energies and talismans shone as they rushed into the sky, shooting for the burning sun in the sky. The last attack of the black wind bandits before their death frightened Xuemo. The smugness in his heart instantly dissipated. His little heart beat rapidly. If the target of their attacks was him, not even dust would be left behind. Clang! The Buddha sound hoop suddenly shook. The golden light exploded, the sound was like thunder. The deep and dignified sound turned into the angry shout of Buddha, strong and fierce. The black-winged bandits inside the formation felt their bodies shake, the Ling power inside their body out of their control. Everyone's faces changed. When they raised their heads, their faces became pale. Countless fist-sized hard lightning rolled down along the thin strands like marbles. The big formation turned at its highest power. A deep and domineering presence destructively spread, unable to be stopped. Suemo gaped. So powerful. The counterattack from the Buddha sound hoop wasn't any less powerful than the moon chime sound storm of the sword test conference. The Buddha sounds were like anger, and the hard lightning like rain. The black-winged bandits lost their minds. These fist-sized hard lightning wasn't as strong as when Zuemo used them, but this was still the true Yang Fiend hard lightning. The domineering Buddha sounds had not disappeared, their Ling power out of their control, just as the hard lightning fell upon them. Wails and swearing entered Zuemo's ears. The body count was high. After this one attack, not even 30 of the black-winged bandits could still stand. Many black-winged bandits were wailing and groaning in puddles of blood. The faces of the still-standing black-winged bandits were full of hopelessness, their eyes terrified. Peerlessly domineering. Zuemo sighed in shock and then felt heart pain. The golden light and lightning around the body of the Buddha sound hoop was clearly much dimmer than before. He hurriedly took the Buddha sound hoop back. If this happened again, the Buddha sound hoop would probably be destroyed. Even if it wasn't destroyed, the grade would definitely drop. It had been so difficult to obtain an upper 4th grade talisman, could Zuemo bear to have it destroyed? Even more, the wandering bandits that had lost all motivation, and he didn't need the Buddha sound hoop to subdue them anymore. He and Lil Pagoda could get them. The harvest was about to begin. His gaze was hot as he turned back to the formation, rubbing his hands. Lil Pagoda, connected to his mind, was also yearning, and excited. Just at this time, Pu Yao suddenly came out. Wait. Chapter 193, Bountiful Harvest. When Pu Yao came out, Zuemo's first response was, 2 hours haven't passed yet. He was still thinking about the promise that Pu Yao had made. If he could get rid of this group in under 2 hours, he would learn the next move of Little Thousand Leaf Hands. Zuemo hungered for the Little Thousand Leaf Hands. Of the 3 moves of Little Thousand Leaf Hands that he had learned, each move had played a crucial role in this battle. The Little Thousand Leaf Hands were all very good spells. If they were not powerful, then they had special uses. Most importantly, what it consumed was spiritual power and not Ling power. To Zuemo presently, spells that used spiritual power were much more practical than spells that used Ling power. I changed my mind, Pu Yao said. Hearing this, Zuemo was infuriated. What did you say? Changed your mind? I just finished busting my ass off, and you changed your mind? Pu Yao waved his hands. He wasn't angry. I'll teach you a move of Little Thousand Leaf Hands. Zuemo's anger instantly extinguished and turned to curiosity. Then what did you change your mind about? One move of Little Thousand Leaf Hands, being guaranteed. He naturally was calm. These people should not be killed, Pu Yao said, his expression deep. Not be killed? Zuemo stilled. Keep them for what? These people don't blink an eye when they kill. It would cause problems to keep them. From any angle, Zuemo was not a generous and kind person. Also, to speak of kindness with these wandering bandits that killed without batting an eye, that was purely seeking death. It was better to take everything from their bodies and then kill them. Constructing the nether pool requires manual labor, Pu Yao said. Oh, you aren't afraid of them rebelling? Zuemo pointed at the crux. I am a Sky Yao. Pu Yao rolled his eyes. The implicit meaning was, to a honored Sky Yao, this was just a little problem. Suemo smirked, and didn't give him any face. Sky Yao? Who told me to run back there? Pu Yao paused, his old face slightly red. Suemo didn't dare to provoke this guy. He pointed at the Black Wind bandits inside the formation, and said, manual laborers don't need talismans, right? Pu Yao waved his hand generously, no. Suemo looked with some sympathy at the wandering bandits. Landing in the hands of a perverse Renyao, it was a fate worse than death. It could be imagined just how dark their future days would be. However, Suemo was not kind due to feeling sympathy. He and Lil Pagoda, one in the light and one in the dark, used the power of the formation to beat the wandering bandits unconscious. Suemo didn't even leave them any clothing, taking everything, before he contentedly threw a bunch of naked people at Pu Yao. The sky ring moon chime formation and the moon in the sky disappeared from the desolate wood reef. There was nothing left except one big pit after another, showing that a battle had taken place here. Bo Feng, who had been watching from afar, shook his head, his tone carrying wonderment. It seems all of the Black Wind bandits are dead. The Black Wind bandits were dead. As the words came out, everyone was shocked. They had been pursuing the Black Wind bandits recently. The longer they trailed them, the more uncertain they felt. The strong strength that the Black Wind bandits displayed made them lack self-confidence. The only confidence they had was that they had more experts on their side. Bo Feng, Gui Feng, and Chang Heng were Ningmai experts that were famous in Sky Moon Jia. But even if they had 3 experts, they had thought if the two sides met it would be a hard battle. Who would have thought a Zhuji, relying on a formation on an island, in a period of time less than 2 hours, had completely killed all of the Black Wind bandits? Chang Heng and Gui Feng looked at the desolate wood reef, which had resumed its normal appearance, and instantly understood. Gui Feng's expression was full of disbelief. He had fought Suemo before. Anyway, he viewed Suemo should not have grown to such a point that he could kill all of the Black Wind bandits by himself. If it was Wei Sheng, he would have found it somewhat possible. Cheng Heng looked much more composed. Even the light in his eyes had dimmed greatly. He seemed to be pondering something. Suemo did not know people were watching him. He was contentedly checking his spoils, Lil Pagoda observing from the side. Silly Bird had ran out. However, Silly Bird was much more composed than Lil Pagoda, raising her neck up high, her attitude proud as she stepped her little bird steps, as though she thought of Jingxia as dirt. However, the occasional glance out of the corner of her eye revealed her nefarious aims. The black gold worm directly burrowed into the little mountain and didn't come out. The other shitty came out. They felt as though they were dreaming. They first saw Suemo Xixiang, and then they saw the mountains of talismans and Jingxia. After that, they turned to stone. Suemo's eyes were bright, saliva dripping out of the corner of his mouth that he did not wipe away. Good things. Good things. He picked up one, and then picked up another, his expression intoxicated, and occasionally laughed. However, the practical Suemo decided he needed to check his personal wealth. He might have made a mountain of profit, but he had also spent a lot. No matter if it was golden crow fire, or Yin fire bead, they were not cheap. The cost of recovery for his wounds, and the nurturing of the Buddha sound hoop were also not going to be a small number. He needed to break even. Click-clack, Suemo started to pick through the pile. He rejoiced that he had the experience of processing materials with the stalagmite fire before. The numbers of items that had passed through his hands was enormous, and helped create his keen pair of eyes. The profits this time were very rich. There were more than 100 flying swords, but their grades weren't very high. The highest grade was Zhang Hao's heavy sword, 4th grade. The sword body was ancient and thick, extremely heavy in the hand, and carved with mountain opener. Other than flying swords, there was a variety of talismans that broadened Suemo's horizons. There were some extremely obscure ones, like nets. One blue light net, 3rd grade, when it left the hand it would become a blue ball of light. If one came close then it would turn into an enormous net that would quickly close. The wealth of the Zhuji was limited. Those that were rich were the several Ningmai, especially Zhang Hao. This guy had 2-dimensional rings to start with, and the riches inside were numerous. Also, the guy had been very picky, and what he had kept were very good items. Like the materials he collected were not of low grade. The majority were 3rd grade, and he had some 4th grade materials. What excited Mo the most were 5 fox teeth. These 5 fox teeth clearly came from the same Yao fox. Each tooth was pure white with no impurities, shining like porcelain. A fragrance that was like orchids and plums spread. The appearance showed it definitely belonged to the top 3rd grade materials. The quality of the water drop sword was very good. If he forged in the 4th grade crimson fire rock that he had, the 2 qualities of fire and water could reach the demands of Li water sword essence. Adding on the teeth vine, and these 5 fox teeth, and the blue icicle crystal he had traded for from the red-robed male, he had managed to gather the materials for 4 of the 5 flying swords. Instantly, he felt the 5 essence sword set was not far. He was only lacking proper earth-based material before his 5 essence sword set could be realized. Most of the talismans on Zhang Hao's body were not ordinary, but most had been damaged. Mo felt a great pain. Those were all lost Jingshi. The other talisman that piqued Mo's interest was a cloak. This cloak was called Shadowless. It was as thin as a cicada's wing and hard to detect with the naked eye. If worn on the body, it would seem to disappear. However, even though he could not see it, Mo could still feel the existence of the cloak. This, shadowless, cloak's only purpose was to conceal his body. Mo was even more surprised that it was a 4th grade cloak. He tried it on, and the effect was outstanding. He couldn't find a trace even if he used his consciousness to search. Good thing. This was definitely a good thing. Mo instantly recognized the value of the cloak. This was a wonderful talisman to make an escape. If things were going badly, he could wrap the cloak around his body and no one could find him. He found it somewhat strange the person he had killed didn't use a talisman as good as this, and used a 3rd grade cloak. What Mo didn't realize was the Black Wind bandits had run rampant for years. Other than being defeated by Wei Xing recently, when had they ever been forced to escape? When Zhang Hao first got the cloak, he treasured it. Then he found he didn't have a use for it at all. While the cloak could conceal him, it basically had no defensive power, so Zhang Hao switched to a 3rd grade talisman that could increase his defenses and was beneficial to charging and fighting. Mo naturally wouldn't be polite, cheerfully putting the cloak on. With 2 extremely fine talismans as the opener, Mo instantly looked down at the remaining talismans. However, these people all had a unique quality of carrying many Jingshi on their body. Mo understood after thinking about it. These wandering bandits traveled everywhere. Nothing was as useful as Jingshi, so they could buy whatever when they got somewhere. All of this was Mo's now. This was an enormous sum. Like Zhang Hao. He had more than 10 pieces of just 4th grade Jingshi. When he put all the Jingshi in front of him, he was stunned. He felt that his eyes were filled with Jingshi. Even the best talisman, if put together with Jingshi of equivalent value, it didn't have the same effect as piles of Jingshi. After a long while, he finally recovered from the shock of the mountain of Jingshi, his blank eyes becoming clear. He took a deep breath, and hurriedly swept the Jingshi into his ring. Continuing to judge the other talismans, his mind was slightly inattentive. Pu Yao's voice suddenly came into Mo's ears. Mo shook and suddenly refocused. He found that Pu Yao had appeared at some unknown time beside him. Pu Yao stared at a white bone on his hand, his eyes unmoving. Mo instinctively waved the bone. Problem. Pu Yao was still staring at the bone, his hand reaching out. "Let me see." "Oh," Mo instinctively handed over the bone. Once he handed it over, he instantly realized, and regret blossomed. He was an idiot. Something that even Pu Yao was interested in, it definitely was something good. Having landed in Pu Yao's hands, it definitely was using meat buns to hit a dog, it would never return. As expected, Pu Yao flipped his hand, and the bone disappeared. He was very natural in saying, "Oh, I'll take the bone." Mo instantly wanted to spit blood. He knew he definitely wouldn't be able to take it back. He responded quickly, "Then what do you trade for it?" "I'll give you a batch of Little Yao guards." Pu Yao didn't give Mo the grounds to bargain. "Little Yao guards? What's that?" Mo's attention was instantly attracted. Pu Yao snickered, "You'll know when it is time." Finishing, he disappeared. Dejectedly, Mo could only go back to his pile of talismans in hopes he would find a few more fine ones. It was a pity that his good luck seemed to have been used up. The rest were all very average and made him even more depressed. When he finished sorting out the last talisman, he suddenly heard a light laugh from the sky. Brothers Wu really had a good harvest. Chapter 194, Golden Armor Guard. Mo looked warily at the three unwelcomed guests in the sky. The one that spoke was a yellow-faced man. Mo recognized him. It was the mysterious person he had fought in the sword test conference. The two people behind him was Changheng and the other was Gui Feng. How did these three get together? He muttered inside. And these three appeared at this time. Was that a coincidence? More likely it was that the three of them had hid and wanted to gain something. Seeing that he had won, they could only come out and greet him. Mo was at the end of his rope. He didn't dare to let these three people inside. The three were stronger than him and he had just also made a fortune. If the three became greedy, he might not be able to keep his little life. This little brother just has gone through a big battle and is heavily injured, and greatly needs rest. There is no time to greet everyone. Please pardon me. Finishing, he rushed away. That nimble and agile movement, did he look like he was heavily injured? The three people in the air were speechless. They had assumed that Mo would exchange pleasantries, and they could find ways of getting closer. But they had underestimated Mo's lack of shame, in turning and leaving. They couldn't do a thing. If they forcefully landed now, that was taking advantage and declaring they possessed malicious aims. The three people didn't care about those fake reputations, but when they saw the huge holes in the ground, they instantly dismissed the idea of charging in. Personally seeing the Black Wind bandits be destroyed, the three were very wary of the formation on Desolate Wood Reef. Mo ignored the three people. If they really dared to charge into the Desolate Wood Reef, he would even gamble on destroying the Buddha Sound Hoop to fight them to the death. When he saw the three standing outside the island, his heart relaxed slightly. He secretly sent Lil Pagoda out to guard. He threw the Buddha Sound Hoop back into the lava fire formation to be nurtured again and started to heal himself. This time, the level of damage to his body was far beyond his predictions, especially since he had kept on fighting with these wounds, and had used medicinal power to suppress the injuries. On the surface, there didn't seem to any problems, but in reality, he had serious internal injuries. Luckily, Master had prepared many Lingdan for him before he left. He hadn't thought he would need to use it so early. He shoved a Lingdan into his mouth and meditated. As the Lingdan entered his mouth, it turned to a stream of coldness that flowed with the circulation of his Ling power, spreading to every corner of his body. The hidden heat of his organs instantly decreased. He felt unspeakably comfortable. 42 people were soaking in the black pond. Their eyes were closed, occasionally having expressions of pain. Threads of smoke silently entered their body from the black pond water and then slowly spread out. Pu Yao's eyes landed on the three Ningmai Black Wind bandits. They were completely covered in black, looking like coal. A small bump had risen on the foreheads of the three people as though something was going to grow out. Pu Yao played with the white bone in his hand, speaking to himself, "Didn't think I would see ancient dragon bone here. The brat really has good luck. Oh, using it on my trash, it really is a waste." As he sighed, he slightly applied force. Pa, the white bone broke into pieces. His hand rising, the ancient dragon bone power turned to 3 white arrows that burrowed inside the bodies of the 3 Ningmai. The 3 Ningmai instantly started to shake like dice, their black faces twisted with expressions of extreme pain. Suddenly, their black skin started to ripple and a layer of scale-like material continuously came out. In just this little while, the 3 had completely changed. Their bodies were covered by a dense layer of white scales like it was a layer of thick armor. The bump on their foreheads continued to grow. Pew, a sharp black horn broke through the skin, and only stopped when it grew to 3 cun long. White scale attendants. The ancient dragon bone is really good, Pu Yao had a surprised expression. Then he became excited. Tilting his head and thinking, he snickered, and then grabbed at empty air. 3 jade boxes appeared on Pu Yao's hands, the mini boxes that Suemo loved so much. Squeezing the jade boxes, Pu Yao gently blew and 3 wisps of golden crow fire flew at the 3 people. The golden crow fire landed on the white scales and with a hiss and entered their bodies. Almost at the same time, mist rose around their body. The black pond water beside them started to bubble as though it was boiling. Seeing that the black pond was covered in mist, Pu Yao became even more excited. He was like a mischievous child who had found a fun toy. He grabbed again at empty air. Ding ding ding. If Suemo saw this, he would have been so angry he could spit blood. Pu Yao's hands were full of crimson fire rock, including 3 pieces of 4th grade crimson fire rock. Suemo only had 6 pieces of 4th grade crimson fire rock. Pu Yao took half of his stock. Pu Yao's left hand pointed in the air. A black-red beguiling flame appeared in front of him. He threw the crimson fire rock on his hands into the flame. He continued to grab at the air, materials appearing in his hands. He didn't even look before throwing them into the fire. After 1 hour, the flame slowly faded, and 3 entirely red broadsword appeared in front of him. The broadsword was about half the height of a person, the width of the blade making them appear like a small door. The body was entirely red like burning metal, giving off a scorching heat. At this time, the mist over the heads of the 3 people in the black pond dissipated, revealing their figures. The scales of the 3 were dyed with a layer of gold, making them look as though they were wearing golden armor. The black spike on their foreheads had disappeared. Before, the 3 had looked dark and scary. Now, the 3 didn't have any hint of dark energies, as though they were gods coming to the mortal world. A young and strong presence was easily detectable. Ancient dragon bone, golden crow fire, nether pool, these Yao guards that were forged really make me anticipate. Pu Yao smiled proudly, white-scaled attendants, no, have to change the name, golden armor guards. This name isn't bad. Haha, who can tell they are Yao guards? Rubbing his chin as he studied for a while, Pu Yao said to himself, oh, no, they are too ugly, and need to be changed. He blew out a ball of flame that grew and enveloped one of them. Instantly, the crackle of flesh burning sounded. A while later, the flame moved away. The person inside the flame had changed in appearance. Right now, his body was covered in a set of golden armor. Even his face was covered all over, the thick armor at the front only revealing the eyes. The shining golden scales had turned into a golden fish scale armor. Other than being very dignified, it was more profound, and mysterious. Pu Yao finally had a satisfied expression. Soon after, all 3 were modified. 3 bright red broadswords turned to 3 red lights and flew towards the 3 people. The 3 simultaneously reached out and grabbed the flying swords. The 3 golden armor guards stood silently, a strong and dignified presence slowly spreading. Pu Yao looked in sympathy at the other Black Wind bandits that were still soaking in the black water pond. You guys who can't be seen in public, you just have to stay here for manual labor. When Xuemo woke up from his meditation, there was joy in his heart. The injuries on his body were generally healed. It would be like nothing had happened once he rested for a while. What he was even happier about was the Ling power that had stopped growing inside his body for a long time had actually grown slightly. The increase was not a lot, but for Xuemo who had stopped growing for a long time, this was an unexpected happy surprise. Just as Xuemo was happy, he saw Pu Yao proudly come over with 3 people dressed in golden armor. Xuemo stilled and warily pointed at the 3 people. Who are they? The 3 were covered in the golden armor. He was unable to see their features, but Xuemo could feel the terrifying presence the 3 gave off all over their bodies. These 3 were very strong. Xuemo's perception was extremely sensitive due to his spirit. The danger that these 3 gave him even surpassed the feeling of danger the head of the wandering bandits gave him. Where did these 3 powerful people come from? Where did they pop out of? His gaze landed on the broadswords in their hands, and silently swallowed. Who was so fucking wasteful? Crimson Fire Rock, definitely not less than 10 pieces, and definitely had more than 1 piece of 4th grade rock. Sky Eye Silver, that was extremely expensive. Xuemo himself only had 3 tails. Any of the broadswords in the 3's hands definitely had 1 tail of Sky Eye Silver added. And the red flame pearl. It was an extremely good fire element material, worth 1,000 jing. There were at least 3 in each broadsword. Great expenditure. Definitely great expenditure. Xuemo drooled. Just the 3 broadswords were worth a lot. If it wasn't the dangerous feeling coming from the 3 people pressuring him, his head might have heated up and he would have gone to rob them. But, the materials, they looked very familiar. Just as he was suspicious, he heard Pu Yao say smugly, "They are golden armor guards. Just finished making them, do you want to try?" Golden armor guards. Xuemo stilled. Didn't you say you were creating Little Yao guards? Little Yao guards are too low quality, Pu Yao said with scorn and continued, and their appearance is too lacking. Look at these golden armor guards. No hint of Yin energy, perfect for dominating a situation. They are also very strong and good at fighting, the best fighters. Really? Xuemo's face was disbelieving. You ignorant country bumpkin naturally has never seen anything this high quality. Pu Yao's face was full of disdain, and he snapped his fingers. Suddenly, one of the golden armor guards behind him disappeared. Ha! A deep bellow sounded. Xuemo felt the space in front of his eyes light up, a blinding light forcing him to squint his eyes. A domineering and forceful red sword light rose. This stroke seemed to rip apart space. A scorching, cruel, and domineering presence filled the air. Xuemo's heart was shocked, the hairs on his body straight. The feeling of danger was like a black cloud filled with lead, pressing down uncomfortably on his chest. The sword light disappeared without warning. At some unknown time, the golden armor guard returned to his original position. Only now did Xuemo hear a soft hiss. Different than the blinding sword light, the sound of the sword was almost non-existent. Xuemo was stunned. Chapter 195, 2 transactions. The strength of the golden armor guards made a deep impression on Xuemo, but what are they really? Xuemo asked as he pointed at the 3 muscle heads. The 3 golden armor guards were very brawny. Standing with their swords, they were like 3 little mountains whose sole purpose was to pressure others. Puppets, Pu Yao said softly. Oh, Xuemo responded. A strong impulse formed to study these 3 puppets. There were many ways to create puppets. The most famous would probably be corpse forging. Things like 1,000-year corpse were the best corpse forging materials. Seal soldiers were also one kind of puppet, but they were completely different than corpse forging. But when he thought about that astonishing sword strike, he decided to stop thinking about this dangerous idea. His eyes stared at the red broadswords in the hand of the 3 golden armor guards. A beat later, Suomo's heart-wrenching wail came out of the cave. "Old ghost! Gu will kill you! Sob sob sob! My crimson fire rock! My sky eye silver, in the sky above the desolate wood reef! How much longer do we have to wait?" Xianxia said impatiently. He would come out soon. Bo Feng was very calm. At the side, Gui Feng's eyes occasionally swept across the desolate wood reef. Different than what they had thought, it wasn't just Suomo on the desolate wood reef, there were also Wukong's sword sect disciples. However, these disciples were all production shouja. At the beginning, these disciples would occasionally look up at them. As time went on, they attended to their own business. The desolate wood reef looked calm, but many important places were covered with white clouds so nothing could be seen. These balls of cloud proved that the big formation of the desolate wood reef had not been critically damaged. Gui Feng felt that Suomo was very mysterious. He was somewhat puzzled why Wukong's sword sect would send such an important disciple to such an isolated place. Was it because they had trust in Suomo? He didn't feel that way. While the importance of the desolate wood reef was undoubted, no matter how great their trust was, the elders shouldn't have been frugal in sending along a few more strong disciples with him. Such an accomplished disciple, he didn't believe any sect was willing to lose him. But Suomo was guarding desolate wood reef alone. This made Gui Feng feel it was more of an exile. The Black Wind bandits had all been killed. If this news spread, it would definitely shake all of Sky Moon Jie. Suomo's own reputation and the reputation of Wukong's sword sect would be pushed to another height. Gui Feng glanced at Bo Feng. There was no impatience on Bo Feng's face. They had been guarding here for 5 days. To show that they didn't have any enmity, he hadn't brought any of the 36 Juji. Gui Feng saw Suomo's figure appear out of the corner of his eye, his mind becoming alert. His gaze swept across the 3 enormous figures behind Suomo. Gui Feng's pupils suddenly shrunk into pinpoints. The golden scale armor covered their entire body, the dense scales flashed with a pure golden sheen. Their faces were covered by gold masks, which only revealed a pair of eyes. The 3 guards dressed in golden armor simultaneously looked at the 3 people in the sky. When Gui Feng's eyes met the 3 people's eyes, his heart shook. The 3 pairs of eyes were strange but all similar in that they were indifferent, cold, and emotionless. Gui Feng even felt that they were dead. He could feel that he was just an ant in their eyes, unable to cause even a ripple. Suddenly, Gui Feng felt he was burning in a fire, an almost tangible pressure forming, and pushing down like a little mountain. Gui Feng snorted coldly, his body moving slightly and circulated his Ling power. The invisible pressure around him instantly disappeared. Successfully getting rid of the other's pressure, Gui Feng did not feel joy at all. Quite the opposite, his complexion was very bad. The two seemed to be even, but Gui Feng knew he was at a disadvantage. Such a powerful expert. Was this Wukong sword sect's hidden strength? He narrowed his eyes. Bo Feng and Xianxia's expressions became serious. Their thoughts were the same as Gui Feng. These 3 shouja covered in golden armor and cultivations above Ningmai, and their strength was very strong. Even though they could not see the features, but the thick killing intent covering the 3 was the killing intent that would only form after countless battles. No wonder the Black Wind bandits were all killed. So the desolate wood reef was also hiding 3 experts. The 3 people rejoiced that they hadn't charged in. Facing any of these golden armor shouja, even Bo Feng didn't have a certain grasp on victory. Ningmai had 3 stratums. Gui Feng and Xianxia were only at the first stratum, but the 3 golden armor shouja were all above second stratum. The difference between Ningmai and Zhuji was large, but the difference between Ningmai were also similarly large. The cultivation of Ningmai's second stratum was 3 times that of a first stratum Ningmai. Their cultivation was not as good as the other, their battle experience not as good as the other, their talismans. They looked at the burning red broadswords. Those were clearly not normal and definitely had reached the 4th grade. The two sides were even. What they had the greatest confidence in was spells. Gue Feng was very confident in the 9 Ghosts Nail Curse that he was practicing. In Zhuo Mo's Sea of Consciousness, Pu Yao muttered, pity about the baldy. He's good material for making golden armor guard. Zhuo Mo did not pay attention, his eyes looking at the sky. This time, with the 3 golden armor guards around him, even though his wounds had not completely healed, he still had more bravery. Thank you for waiting for so long, is there something I can help with? Zhuo Mo did not like to chit-chat, and said forwardly. Bo Feng did not twist, and said, this one has 2 matters to ask. Oh, Zhuo Mo was slightly surprised. He hadn't thought the other really had a matter, and 2 of them at that. Brothers Wa killing the Black Wind Bandits is really a happy matter, Bo Feng said, I want to buy some news from Brothers Wa. Black Wind Bandits? Zhuo Mo stilled and then reacted. So his attackers had been the Black Wind Bandits, no wonder they were so strong. His mind's whirling, he quickly responded, what news? Bo Feng started at Zhuo Mo and said seriously, I want to buy the position of a secret realm from Brothers Wa. Zhuo Mo's heart jumped. Secret realm. He truly was shocked by the words secret realm. Zhuo Mo had missed the secret realm exploration after the sword test conference because he had been thrown into the sword essence formation. It had been a regret of his. He hadn't thought that he would suddenly hear information about a secret realm. Bo Feng suddenly running over to ask him the location of the secret realm, the clever Zhuo Mo instantly realized where the information about the secret realm would come from. The Black Wind Bandits. Definitely the Black Wind Bandits. Pu Yao reacted even more quickly than he did, and had more tricks. In the blink of an eye, he had gotten the answers he wanted from the manual laborers that were still soaking in the black pond. Hearing Pu Yao speak of it, Zhuo Mo understood the general shape of the matter, and instantly was disappointed. The first people to find the secret realm were the 3 of the red-robed Shuzhe. For some reason, the news had been leaked, and they were targeted by the Black Wind Bandits. However, the 3 were extremely slippery, and tricked the Black Wind Bandits, almost clearing out the entire secret realm before fleeing. Zhuo Mo finally understood why the 3 people had so many good items on their body. So it had been a secret realm. He had admiration and disappointment. However, a secret realm that others had gone through did not hold any attractions to him. However, he wouldn't give the information so easily to Bo Feng. The cleared-out secret realm might not have anything good, but the Ling energy of the secret realm was dense and perfect for making a residence. It was not very useful for him, but to the sect, it was very good. Bo Feng evidently wanted this secret realm. Haha, Zhuo Mo smiled, but his wooden expression looked very strange. How does Brother Bo want to buy it? Speaking about business, he became alert. In any case, he had the initiative. He could sell or not sell. The red-robed man and his fellows had run to Little Mountain Jia, and definitely wouldn't be coming back soon. The only people who knew the location of the secret realm were the Black Wind Bandits, but all of the Black Wind Bandits were soaking in the Black Pond. Even if he didn't sell its location to Bo Feng and sent the news back to the sect, he would get many rewards. But in the deepest part of his heart, Zhuo Mo didn't plan on telling the information to the sect. If it was in the past, he definitely wouldn't have hesitated in reporting the information to the sect. But the only person he missed in the sect right now was Master. The present Wukong sword sect was not the Wukong sword sect of the past that had felt like a home. If it wasn't for Master, he wouldn't have any supplies. He wouldn't even have had the Wukong flag. If he came to such an isolated place as the desolate wood reef, he would have more dangers than lucky encounters. He couldn't help but ball up his hands. Destiny, it was more reliable to grasp it in his own hands. Haha, Bo Feng laughed lightly, he seemed to have already had a plan. I will use a piece of news to exchange with Brother Zhuo. News? Bo Feng's suggestions was out of Zhuo Mo's expectations. Bo Feng said generously, Brother Zhuo should look first. If you are not satisfied, we can keep negotiating. Finishing, his finger flicked and a jade scroll shot at Zhuo Mo Pia. A golden palm reached from behind Zhuo Mo and accurately grasped the jade scroll. Bo Feng smiled and didn't speak. Inside, he praised Zhuo Mo's carefulness. Zhuo Mo took the jade scroll, and lowered his head to read. There was not much inside the jade scroll, but after reading the last word, Zhuo Mo felt he was in a glacier, his entire body cold. How is it? Is Brother Zhuo satisfied? Bo Feng asked. Zhuo Mo took a deep breath, and then bowed with folded hands at Bo Feng. He said seriously, many thanks, Brother Bo. Finishing, he took out an empty jade scroll, entered the position of the secret realm, and threw it to Bo Feng. Bo Feng took the jade scroll. After reading it, joy appeared on his face. When he finished, he crushed the jade scroll to powder. Brother Zhuo is really refreshing. Bo Feng said crisply, this one wants to ask for a wisp of golden crow fire from Brother Zhuo, please help me. Golden crow fire? Zhuo Mo nodded, if Brother Bo has earth elemental materials above 4th grade, a deal can be made. He didn't ask for a high price. The news that Bo Feng had just given him was too important. Bo Feng could not control his joy, we really have good fate. This one luckily has a piece of breathing rock, and of high quality. It should fulfill Brother Zhuo's demands. Trade. Zhuo Mo did not hesitate in nodding. In 4th grade earth element materials, breathing rock was a rare fine material. It usually existed in the deepest parts, a special earthy gray that naturally clung together, unable to be cut with anything metal. Zhuo Mo was excited. He finally gathered together everything for his 5 essence sword set. Zhuo Mo saw Bo Feng and the others leave. What are you going to do? Pu Yao suddenly asked. Zhuo Mo inhaled deeply, and then exhaled, as though he wanted to push out all the darkness that had formed in his heart. I'll take it step by step. Pu Yao smiled coldly, you didn't receive one bit of information. TSK, seems those old codgers don't value you very much. Zhuo Mo was silent. Plan on flying back. Pu Yao didn't have any sympathy. There's not enough time, Zhuo Mo shook his head. From the desolate wood reef to Wukong Mountain, flying would take multiple months. Don't worry, Pu Yao said unconcernedly, even if the Yaomao come, it would be small groups. Probably just Night Stalk Yao and Moon Demon, nothing important. Night Stalk Yao and Moon Demon? Are they very strong? Zhuo Mo asked curiously. He didn't know much about Yaomao. Little worms, Pu Yao twisted his mouth, about the same as Ningmai. Then why is everyone fleeing? Zhuo Mo could not understand, if they are about the same as Ningmai, we can completely kill them. Pu Yao smiled scornfully. Whether Night Stalk Yao or Moon Demon, if they face your Ningmai, they can fight 1 against 3. His bloody pupils suddenly rippled, their growing environment is much more cruel than you guys. So what? Zhuo Mo wasn't persuaded. Sky Moon Jia has Jin Dan. Pu Yao shrugged indifferently, this is just the beginning. I am willing to bet, no, guarantee that the old codgers of your sect are definitely planning on migrating away. Who is willing to bleed themselves to help other people stop Yaomao? Wukong Mountain is the base of our sect, you are too naive. Pu Yao's words were full of scorn, just a poor mountain. As long as they have people, where can't they go? Without the mountain, they can go steal another one. Zhuo Mo couldn't speak. Prepare early, Pu Yao shook his head, I won't have any time in the near future, don't bother me. He disappeared after finishing. Zhuemo stood at his spot. He was unfocused for a moment. He could not think that the entire front line of Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia had collapsed in such a short period of time. This was the news that he traded with Bo Feng. Supposedly, it was a group of Yaomua that had appeared at the flank and caused the collapse of the entire defensive line which fortified Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia. Sky Moon Jia was not immediately next to Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia, but it wasn't far from it, so it was in a very dangerous situation. Many sects of Sky Moon Jia had already started to prepare for migration. This was the news from 5 days ago. What had frozen Zhuemo's heart was that he had not received any news from his own sect. News from 5 days ago, with Wukong Sword sect's present status, they couldn't be ignorant of it. If he moved now, he couldn't meet up with the sect unless the sect migrated to Little Mountain Jia. But if they were going through Little Mountain Jia, they would have notified him so he could prepare to receive them. But he hadn't received anything. He knew that he was set on a different path from the sect after this incident. He wasn't sad. In reality, when he had came out of the Sword Essence formation, he had sensed it coming, but he hadn't thought the day would come so quickly. The present Wukong Sword sect had long not been the Wukong Sword sect of the past. Never mind, he should think of way to protect himself. It was better to rely on himself than on others. Zhuemo's idea was quite different than anyone else. He decided to keep guarding Desolate Wood Reef. Desolate Wood Reef's environment was special. Adding on the Sky Ring Moon Chime formation, and the Golden Armor Guards, he could basically guarantee his own safety. If it was needed, he could enter Little Mountain Jia through the Jia River at any time. But before that, he needed to increase his own strength. Otherwise, with his Zhuji cultivation and despite his large wealth of Jingshi, not a piece of him would remain. If he left, he would take the shitty with him. He had found all the materials for the 5 Essence sword set. Also, his cultivation, which hadn't moved for such a long time, finally had started to grow. At this time, it was better to control his personality and increase his own strength before anything else. The reforging of Water Drop Sword was very quick, only taking 1 day. He added a piece of 4th grade Crimson Fire Rock. Even though that did not elevate it to 4th grade, it rose to the top of 3rd grade. The outer layer of the Water Drop Sword had an additional aura of bright red flame that constantly burned. Zhuemo renamed it, Water Fire Sword. The teeth vine was soaked in a Ling Spring. There were no Ling Springs on the Desolate Wood Reef. This Ling Spring was one that Zhuemo made himself using formations. The effect was not as good as natural Ling Springs. Zhuemo could only increase the time it spent in the water. The 10 days it should have taken to forge, were extended to 30 days by Zhuemo. The blue icicle crystal, the breath rock, and the fox teeth were all 4th grade materials. It was almost impossible for Zhuemo at present to forge them. He could only process them into sword billets. When his cultivation reached Ningmai and he had absorbed Golden Crow Fire, could he finish the forging. All of his other time was spent on meditation. In this period of time, even Pu Yao, who usually disdains Zhuemo's cultivation, intelligently chose to remain silent. Also, Pu Yao was very busy in this time. Zhuemo received a flying sword message from his master. On there, it said that Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia had collapsed, and the sect decided to move to Bright Wave Jia. She told Zhuemo to be careful and protect himself. It also told him he could enter other sections. If there was a chance, he could also go to Bright Wave Jia to find them. Zhuemo put the flying sword message into his ring, and turned back to his meditation. On the Desolate Wood Reef, the Black Lake had been completely transformed. The inky black pond water now glowed darkly. On the shore, a simple and old-fashioned stone altar had taken form. 30-something little Yao guards continuously took water from the black water pond and poured it onto the stone tiles of the altar. The stone tiles were like sponges. No matter how much black water was poured onto the surface, they didn't leave one drop behind. Pu Yao looked at the altar, not saying a word. The number of Xianxia that passed through Desolate Wood Reef increased over the days. At the beginning, there were little crowds. After a while, it turned to a continuous flow. The power of the Sky Ring Moon Chime Formation was much higher than before, so the consumption of Jingxia was also much higher. Each day, it needed 20 pieces of third-grade Jingxia to remain active. However, even though it was very expensive, but the strength exuded by the Brahma Sound Ring, and the Sky Ring Moon Chime Formation, prevented the passing Xianxia from daring to have any greedy thoughts. The rumors were that the Black Wind Bandits had attacked the Desolate Wood Reef, but ended up all being annihilated. There were also rumors that Mo was selling Golden Crow Fire. As long as they could pay the price or had good things to trade, they could buy it at any time. Each Xianxia that came onto the island would ask around about these two pieces of news when they landed. As the flow of people increased, Mo's daily income also shot up. However, he didn't have any time to put on it. Each day, he furiously meditated, hoping to quickly break through to Ningmai. In comparison, Lil Pagoda was living very well these past days. The large amounts of talismans and materials that Mo had gotten from the Black Wind Bandits were quite good. Since Mo could not use them, and there was no place he could sell them, he decided to feed it all to Lil Pagoda. Lil Pagoda flowed with light. Compared to the fragility of the past, it seemed to be brimming with life. The tip of the tower that had been as sharp as a sword was now much more round. The slender body seemed much broader. The past 5-colored pagoda gave people the feeling of darkness and sharpness. Now, it was more lively and nimble, the aura of killing was much smaller. What Mo felt most strange about were the 5 little gourds appeared on the eaves of the first level. The 5 little gourds were all of different colors, belonging to the 5 elements. They were the size of a grain of a rice. If Mo did not look closely, he wouldn't have found them. Mo and Lil Pagoda communicated many times on the use of the 5 little gourds. Lil Pagoda tried very hard to explain, but Mo didn't understand even after a long time. Full of anticipation, Mo couldn't do anything except throw the question to one side. To Mo's joy, Lil Pagoda spat out a piece of grey mud again. It was slightly larger than last time, about the size of his thumb. Mo put the little bit of grey mud into his ring. The other Shidi also knew now that the sect had already left Sky Moon Jia. Everyone's mood became terrible. Some people joined other sections. Mo didn't stop them. In situations like this, they were certainly free to enter other sections. Power and responsibility were tied together. The sect surrendered their responsibilities to them. Accordingly, they also surrendered the power to constrain them. All of Mo's efforts were put on cultivation. He could feel his cultivation progressing extremely quickly. On a certain day, he finally started his charge at Ningmai. Chapter 197, Ningmai. The Ling power inside Mo's body was thick like a cloud as it filled his channels. If it was not being channeled, they would be abnormally quiet and flow extremely slow as though they had stopped. This was a characteristic unique to Zhuji Ling power. The Ling power in Mo's body was thick like rain clouds, showing that his cultivation had reached the peak of Zhuji. The reason that his cultivation had grown so rapidly recently was all due to a strange repulsion at the little holes in his dantian. Before, any Ling power he absorbed would spill from the little holes. Right now, the holes still existed, but the Ling power in his dantian would not spill and leave. Mo was very suspicious that this strange repelling force was caused by the draw of earth energy away from his body, as this began occurring after the earth energy had tempered his body. However, the mysteries of channels were not something a little person like Mo could understand. He quickly threw it to the back of his mind and started to cultivate. The cloud-like Ling power relentlessly circulated in his body. Xuemo had already maintained this for 4 hours. His Ling power was active while his mind and body were all at their best condition. He started to charge into Ningmai. All the Ling power in his body were roused, they started to flow through the channels at a speed Xuemo was familiar with. Ningmai, or concentrating channels, required condensing the mist-like Ling power into liquid form Ling power. The simplest way was to continuously absorb Ling power, thus increasing the density of Ling power, causing it to condense from gas into liquid. However, the process was not so simple when this condensation occurred in real life. After one's cultivation reached the peak of Zhuji, they would encounter resistance when they absorbed Ling power. If they could not absorb Ling power, they could not increase the density of Ling power. Many people found themselves stuck at this gate into Ningmai. There were many ways to break through to the stage of Ningmai, such as Ling Dan. The markets would sell Ningmai Dan. The success rate was high, but not everyone liked to use them. Different than Zhuji, those in Ningmai's stage started to comprehend the laws of the world. The breakthrough to Ningmai was a wonderful opportunity to comprehend all kinds of laws. Xiuzhe, who had confidence and high aspirations for themselves, usually would not choose the Ningmai Dan but to comprehend by themselves. Xuemo chose to comprehend it himself. With his present wealth it was very easy to buy a Ningmai Dan, but he was understood that the easier the beginning was, the easier it was to trip at later stages. If he walked more steadily at the beginning, even if he suffered more, the beneficial it would be for him later. He had grown in this half-year, and with the recent battle he had grown rapidly. This kind of growth was not just in cultivation formations, it was also the growth of his mind. Continuously encountering certain things caused him to understand many things. Even though it was hard to change his habit of taking shortcuts when possible, but regarding cultivation, he was abnormally steadfast. Carefully channeling the Ling power in his body, his spiritual leaf hand opened like a flower. Any change in his Ling power would be instantly detected by the leaf hand. Using spiritual power had become Xuemo's instinct. After he started embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation, he became used to using his consciousness in any situation. This habit had given him many benefits. He became even more determined to persist in this habit. The mist-like Ling power continuously magnified in front of his eyes. He could even see tinier wisps of Ling power swimming within. They were like a group of tadpoles. They appeared to be one, but the interior was made up of countless little entities. There was a weak attraction between wisps of Ling power, but as the Ling power in the channels continued to increase, there was a kind of repulsion that occurred between the Ling power. The amount of Ling power in the channels had reached a limit. For some reason, Xuemo suddenly thought of Wukong Mountains, thought of the time that he had been farming in Ling fields at Wukong Mountain. A faint sorrow slowly flowed at the bottom of his heart. The Ling power inside his body seemed to feel his emotions and instantly slowed down. It took only a short while for Xuemo to fight his way out of the sadness. The world could not be predicted. He had started to learn how to deal with these emotions. He didn't hold any hatred towards Wukong Sword Sect. The sect leader's choice was not wrong at the core. With the exception of a few conservative and extremely old sects, the great majority of sects were extremely mobile. He just had never thought this would happen to him. Focusing, Xuemo controlled his thoughts and brought his attention back on his Ling power. He knew why he would suddenly recall farming Ling fields on Wukong Mountain. The mist made him think of little art of cloud and rain. He was so familiar with the little art of cloud and rain, he couldn't be any more familiar. It was the spell out of the 5 basic spells that he had the deepest comprehension of. For a long time, he had relied on it to not starve. Wasn't the process of Ningmai just transforming water element power to rain? The little art of cloud and rain required first to use the spell to gather water element power. When the power reached a certain level, it would form water drops and fall as rain, nurturing the Ling fields. The two were so similar. How did Ling rain form? Xuemo was too familiar. In the past, in order to study the little art of cloud and rain, he almost took apart everything in the little art of cloud and rain. Water element power was invisible and intangible. It could not directly turn to water drops. There were two requirements, one was having enough water element power, the other was collisions. The water element power had to collide among themselves. Only through mutual collisions to overcome the repulsion between the water element power could water drops form. The water drop would increase in size and condense in the air. One way worked, so it worked for 10,000 problems. Zhuomo's thoughts became abnormally clear and he was very confident that his direction was not wrong. Since the Ling power in his body had reached a limit and no matter how he tried, he could not absorb any more Ling power, then what he needed to do now was to cause the Ling power to collide. To cause the collisions in little art of cloud and rain, Zhuo used turbulence in the air. The changes in air flow would cause the water element power to continuously collide. Naturally, this method would not work on Ling power. Other than Ling power, the channels did not contain anything else. His direction was not wrong. What he had to find now was a realistic method. After thinking for a while, he thought of a way. Smashing Ling power. If he split his Ling power into two parts and then made them smash into each other at high speeds, would that accomplish the effects of a collision? His mind became alert. It would be difficult for others to use their mind for two things at once, but he possessed the leaf hand, it wasn't a problem. He didn't rashly start but continued to sit and ponder. He thought through every possible problem that he could think of. Some questions that he didn't know the answers to, he would only know when he tried it. Zhuo decided to start experimenting. He split the Ling power inside his body to two parts. The spiritual leaf hand started to shake, two portions of Ling power started to move along their own paths. One half of Ling power flowed through the channels on his left side, revolving clockwise. The other half of his Ling power flowed through the channels on his right and revolved counterclockwise. Zhuomo's mind was clear, untainted by mortal matters, no sorrow or joy. On his body, there was none of the frugality and worldliness that he usually had, but a faint and clean aura. His Ling power circulated while gradually speeding up. The reason that low-level Xianxia attacks were so weak, besides their cultivation, was that they were limited by the speed the Ling power circulated through their body. When high-level Xianxia thought, their Ling power would be like a tsunami, and a killing move would form. For low-level Xianxia, even if they managed to respond in time, and channeled the Ling power in their body, the time that was needed was much longer than high-level Xianxia. At some unknown time, his body had become wet, a sticky black layer pasted onto his body and emitting a nasty odor. Zhuo hurriedly cast the little art of cloud and rain, and washed his body clean. The black substance were impurities from his body. After finishing, Zhuo felt his body was filled with Ling power, unable to stop himself from howling. Lilith Pagoda that was in charge of the sky ring moon chime formation simultaneously started the formation with a ring from the Buddha sound hoop. All of Desolate Wood Reef could hear it. Chapter 198, What is the situation? After venting his joy, Zhuo gradually calmed down. He quickly made a new discovery. His vision had little tiny threads. What was this? Zhuomo's heart moved and he started using his scripture. As expected, these strands flowed towards him. Ling energy. So that was how Ling energy looked in the air. Zhuo suddenly realized. Quickly, another question popped up in his head. Then where did the Ling energy in the air come from? Ling veins. Then where did Ling veins come from? Zhuo laughed. Not even Jindan experts could explain these topics. He was just a Ningmai, what was the use in thinking so much? He brought his attention back to his body. Now that he broke through to Ningmai, there were many places that needed a reassessment. If someone asked Zhuai Mo what the dominant feeling of Ningmai was, then it was the feeling of enough Ling power. The Ling power in his body was 3 times what it had been previously. The feeling of having enough Ling power was extremely pleasurable, as though his body was filled with power. The lack of Ling power had been his biggest limit before. Now that he had broken through the limit, it was an exhilarating feeling. The spells that he could not complete before, he could easily cast them now. This was just the first stratum of Ningmai. He made a rough guess of the Ling power inside his body. It was about 3 jing. When one reached Ningmai, the Ling power inside the body was measured with a new unit, jing. The Ling power of 1 jing was the Ling power contained in a standard 3rd grade jingshi. The peak of the first stratum of Ningmai was about 10 jing. After that, he would reach a period of steady growth. The Ling power in Ningmai was far purer than in Zhuji. There was a change of properties in regard to power and control. Zhuai Mo flipped his hands, threads of fire began dancing. In an instant a 4-turn fire formation had taken form. There was none of the previous difficulty. The feeling of ease made it enjoyable for Zhuai Mo previously. When he then tried using Li water burning heavens, this move would have taken half of his Ling power, but now it was easily accomplished. The flame like water carried a killing intent with it. Zhuai Mo, having killed now, had a slight aura of killing that he did not have before. The plentiful Ling power flooded through the sword, the water-shaped flame was abnormally detailed. Ling power was the foundation of a xiuzhi. Without Ling power, even if one had the best talismans, they could not be used. An example were 4th grade talismans. To use killing moves with flying swords under 4th grade, it would usually take 1 jing of Ling power. Zhuai Mo was able to use it 3 times now. In Zhuji, he could only just manage it once. Li water burning heavens was a killing move. Zhuai Mo had to almost use half of his Ling power to use it 1. Now that his Ling power was more pure, the expenditure was also less. He could easily cast it 10 times. To use an intermediate 4th grade flying sword to cast a killing move, it would use approximately 2 jing of Ling power. Good talismans were powerful, but the Ling power they consumed were also very terrifying. Not everyone could use them. Only the best talismans were powerful and used little Ling power, like the soul-tethered talismans. But those talismans were a matter of luck. The exhilarated Zhuai Mo furiously worked himself. Chun Yuqing carefully inspected the butterfly chrysalises in the beast pool. 3 butterfly chrysalis silently hung on the wall of the best pool. The patterns on each of the butterfly chrysalis were different. One was multicolored, another was faint blue, and the last one was gray and nondescript. Of the 6 infant worms, only 3 had become chrysalises. This success rate was not very high, but Chun Yuqing was not demotivated, instead he was full of anticipation. The transformation process of the 3 infant larvae had been completely different than any he had seen before. From the patterns on the chrysalises, the 3 Ling butterflies would be different types. This point made him sigh. In his previous experience, he had never encountered this kind of situation. The treatment of the 3 infant larvae had not been different. Theoretically, the mature Ling butterflies should have been the same type, and only differed in quality. The more he studied the beast pool, the more wondrous he found the beast pool. He still held a grudge about the incident with the Black Wind bandits. That feeling of helplessness, of only being able to watch, he would never forget in his life. Having been stimulated, he put 200% of his effort into these Ling butterflies. Being abandoned by the sect was not a huge blow to him. He had only been in Wukong's sword sect for a short period of time, and didn't have a strong sense of belonging to the sect. He knew that many of the Shixian were leaving, but he did not go with them. After these days, his confidence in Zhuai Mo far surpassed his confidence in sections. Compared to the tragic outlook of other people, he felt this situation was pretty good. At least, Zhuai Shixian would not be re-stained by the sect, his future prospects may even be better. Gongsun Cha Shidi also did not leave. The three most powerful people in this group were still together. Those people that left would definitely regret it, he thought. Quickly, he threw those thoughts far away, his eyes staring at the beast pool. Sounds of footsteps came over. He didn't turn around. A head appeared over his shoulder. "How is it?" Xianxia asked in a low voice. The two of them chose to stay and their relationship had become close. Xianxia was a butcher, but they hadn't hunted any Ling beasts recently, so he was very idle. If he used some more thought, and forged the 5 essence sword set, his power would increase a few more fractions. His howl had alarmed all of the desolate wood reef. The Xianxia that had been staying on the island instantly understood that Xuemo had broken through to Ningmai. The Xianxia that had previously been restless instantly became quiet. No matter how strong the formation was, before people saw it, many did not believe it. Xuemo did not lack for fame, but what was also famous was his Juji cultivation. In the eyes of the great majority, this point was enough to erase his advantages in other areas. This was Sky Moon Jia, dominated by Sword Xiu Sky Moon Jia. But now, Xuemo had managed to fill in the last shortcoming. In the hearts of others, Xuemo's danger had risen linearly. A Ningmai Xianxia who could fight Ningmai when he was in Juji, his danger did not have to be stated now that he was in Ningmai. All of that didn't have much to do with Xuemo. He was hungering after his 5 essence sword set, but before that, he had to first absorb Golden Crow fire. After the stalagmite fire turned to inky black lava white fire, it was a 3rd-grade fire seed. However, for the present Xuemo, it wasn't quite enough. After a 3rd-grade fire was used with the 4-turn fire formation, it could barely process 4th-grade materials. It could barely forge 4th-grade materials like fox teeth and blue icicle crystal into sword billets. But if he wanted to forge a flying sword, it was not enough. For other people, finding a 4th-grade fire seed was as difficult as ascending to the heavens, but for Xuemo, he completely did not have worry about this area. The amount of Golden Crow fire on his hands could be counted in double digits. Golden Crow fire was a rare fine quality specimen in 4th-grade fire seeds, and was one of the most sought after fire seeds. But the problem that Xuemo faced was a difficult one. Was he to use the pure Golden Crow fire to replace inky black lava white fire, or use the Golden Crow fire as the primary body and merge it with inky black lava white fire? Both actions had their advantages and disadvantages. Pure Golden Crow fire was undoubtedly strong in its power, but its domineering and yang qualities made it so that it could be used to process a smaller range of items. If inky black lava white fire was added, the power would not be as good as pure Golden Crow fire, but because it had many qualities it could be used to process a larger range of items. For example, it could process cold and icy items like the blue icicle crystal, but pure Golden Crow fire could not do that. It really was a painful problem. Xuemo had a headache. Just at this time, he saw Xianxia pant as he ran over in a panic. Seeing him, the other shouted, "Xixiang, not good. Chun Shitty has fainted." Chapter 199, Beast Service Card. When Xuemo hurried to the beast pool, but when he saw the glowing Chun Yucheng, he stopped in his tracks. "Didn't you say he fainted?" Xuemo turned around and saw Xianxia's stunned face. Chun Yucheng became even more exuberant when he saw Xuemo and came charging over, "Xixiang, Xixiang. Success. We're successful." Xuemo didn't know what was going on. Success. What success? Ling butterflies. Chun Yucheng spread his hands. There were 3 jade cards in his hands, beast service cards. Xuemo's eyes lit up, and unconsciously raised his voice. "Really? Let me see." Beast service card, a piece of 4 CUN long and 1.5 CUN jade board. There were lucky clouds at the 4 corners. At the very center, a butterfly was motionless. Holding it in his hand, Xuemo flipped it over several times. So this is a beast service card. Gongsun Cha threw his previous inquiry to the back of his mind and crowded over. Xuemo did not scorn Gongsun Cha's excitement. It was the first time he had seen a beast service card as well. The earth-plowing earthworm and other ling beasts that he used before were too low in grade, and didn't have the qualifications to use beast service cards. Only high-grade ling beasts would need beast service cards. To store a ling beast into the card was to process and then make it submit to the owner, so the beast would follow the owner's orders. The beast service card was also the residence of the ling beast. What's the grade of the 3 ling butterflies? Xuemo still flipped and caressed the card. The patterns on the 3 beast service cards were similar but all had their own characteristics. One of the cards had multicolored patterns, one was entirely blue, the last gray-white. Chen Yucheng was full of pride. The multicolored is the peak of 3rd grade, the rest are high 3rd grade. Facing the expectant eyes of the other 2, he took the 3 beast service cards and introduced, the ling butterfly that is multicolored has 3 spells, rainbow pupils, illusion poison, and poison change. I've never heard of the 3 spells before so I do not know what the effects are. Xixiang will need to investigate it yourself. 3rd grade ling beasts that can use 3 spells naturally are the best of 3rd grade. But these 3 spells are really weird. The Dong Fu poisonous moth is only 2nd grade, why would this ling butterfly be primarily poisonous? As he spoke, Chen Yucheng slowly wandered off the beaten path of conversation yet again. Xuemo and Gongsun Cha helplessly exchanged a look. It wasn't the first time they had encountered this kind of situation. Chen Yucheng was a maniac about raising animals, so at any time, he could digress on a topic. Xuemo lightly coughed. Chen Yucheng seemed to wake from his dream, bashfully scratching his forehead. Oh, let's continue. This blue butterfly has 2 spells, but both are water element spells. It looks like it isn't any different from rain mark butterfly, but it definitely isn't a rain mark butterfly. So strange, seeing he was going to wander off again, Gongsun Cha hurriedly reminded, the last one. Oh, Chen Yucheng was pulled back. This gray butterfly is also very unique. It only has 1 spell, Ling Eye. This gray butterfly is most suitable for Gongsun Shidi. Ling Eyes can detect the density of Ling energy. If it is used to dismember beasts, it is a great aid. Gongsun Cha did not hesitate in taking the gray butterfly's beast service card from his hands. This one is mine. Xuemo naturally chose the multicolored beast service card. For things that he did not understand, he always followed the most basic rationale, choose the most expensive one. Chen Yucheng did not have much interest in the remaining beast service card. We should sell this one. High 3rd grade, it can sell for a pretty good price. Xuemo thought, and then shook his head. Shidi, take it. The situation is not good now, if you have it, Shidi can have a measure of self-protection. Exactly. Gongsun Cha agreed. Okay, Chen Yucheng nodded, but my cultivation is low. If I want to process this beast service card, it would take a lot of time. It's worth it no matter how long you spend, Xuemo said. Then the beast pool, we're not using it anymore. Chen Yucheng understood what Xuemo meant. No, Xuemo shook his head. Let's destroy it so it won't land on other people's hands. Chen Yucheng and Gongsun Cha became silent, the mood instantly becoming heavy. Seeing the two seem very dejected, especially Chen Yucheng, Xuemo comforted, it's fine. When we find a new place to rest, we can build a new one. Chen Yucheng finally looked more expectant. Gongsun Cha suddenly said, I just heard a shout before. Did Xixiang break into Ningmai? That was me, Xuemo nodded. The two instantly became lighter, the depression on their hearts sweeping away. Chen Yucheng smiled and said, that's great. Xixiang is in Ningmai, now I can sleep peacefully at night. He was full of confidence in Zhuemo. Gongsun Cha did not speak, but there was a light in his eyes, the smile on his face unspeakably devious. Our income isn't bad recently. At least 50 or 60 people every day, at max 100 people. Each person is charged 100 pieces of third-grade jingshi. Overall, the daily income is 10 to 20 pieces of fourth-grade jingshi. 10 to 20 pieces of fourth-grade jingshi, Zhuemo sucked in a breath. All of his discomfort and dejection were instantly swept away. This terrifying number made his little heart beat rapidly. A short time ago, one piece of fourth-grade jingshi was an enormous sum for him. As expected, it was easy to get rich in troubled times. Even bandit leaders like Zhang Hao only carried about 10 or so pieces of fourth-grade jingshi on his body. That was Zhuemo's daily income now. An enormous feeling of good fortune surrounded Zhuemo. He felt he had never been so rich before. Jingshi increase a person's courage. Zhuemo's confidence shot up. So what if there was Yamo? These days, there were no monsters that could not be smashed to death with jingshi. According to my estimates, this is just the beginning. After a while, the migration will reach a peak. A conservative estimate would be 500 xiuzhi passing through each day. Gongsun Cha's refined and delicate face smiled softly and darkly, making Chun Yuncheng's body feel cold. 500, Zhuemo felt so many jingshi were flying in front of his eyes, his heart was flying. One person was 100 pieces of third-grade jingshi, 500 people, that was 100 pieces of fourth-grade jingshi. No matter what the price of commodities had grown to now, 100 pieces of fourth-grade jingshi was definitely a number with great purchasing power. However, this jingshi isn't that easy to make, Gongsun Cha slowly said. Zhuemo's heated head instantly cleared. What? People dare to plot against us? When he said this, his voice was full of killing intent. Groups with many members may not be willing to pay, Gongsun Cha said shortly. Zhuemo recovered from the blow of jingshi. That was right. If a group had many people, they would definitely not be willing to pay the toll. 100 pieces of third-grade jingshi was fine for Ningmai, but it was not an insignificant sum for Zhuji Xiuzhi. A single person would be afraid of the formation on the island and the golden armor guards, but if there were many people, the situation would not be easy to control. For jingshi, Zhuemo had more enthusiasm than anyone, his brains calculating faster than anyone else. That's easy. We can hire some Ningmai sword shio. 100 pieces of third-grade jingshi a day. This price, we can hire many Ningmai sword shio. Zhuemo smirked, I'm in Ningmai now. I can expand the formation. Who won't give the jingshi, Ji will destroy their souls. Zhuemo said hatefully. Gongsun Cha's eyes were bright while Chun Yucheng's face was full of shock. Hong Yang saw the little island coming up and released a breath inside. It wasn't just him, the 10 guards behind him also released a breath. Long flights were exhausting. There was a little island up ahead. They could finally rest for a while. That should be the desolate wood reef. We can use the area to rest and recover. After 2 days, we will pass the Jie River, he ordered. The 10 guards protected him as they flew towards the desolate wood reef. Hong Yang was the storekeeper of a large merchant business who had been sent to Sky Moon Jie. He had recently received an order from the merchant house for him to take all of the store's jingshi and important talismans to leave Sky Moon Jie and enter Little Mountain Jie. When he received this order, he had almost assumed that someone was pretending to send a false order. Only when he personally went to confirm it did he know what was happening. So he took the 10 strongest guards of the shop, and made a low-key escape to Little Mountain Jie. As the procession flew near Desolate Wood Reef, they unconsciously slowed their speed. In the sky above the Desolate Wood Reef, a golden sun hung high, countless golden threads falling down. Many rings of light were strung on the golden strings, occasionally chiming. Before nearing, Hong Yang felt the domineering and pressuring presence from the formation. Such a powerful formation. He was shocked. He wasn't a country bumpkin. To be able to manage the merchant business of one Jia, his eyes were undoubtedly skilled. Ah! One of the guards gasped in shock. What is it? He couldn't help ask. This formation seems a bit like the formation that the sword test conferences Zhuemo used. The guard pondered for a long time before saying, but above Zhuemo's formation was a moon, this formation has a sun. Zhuemo, Hongyang chewed on this name. One of the most accomplished disciples of Wukong's sword sect, he naturally knew about him. But his information channels were wide. He also knew that Wukong's sword sect had already moved to Bright Wave Jia. A core disciple like Zhuemo definitely wouldn't remain in Sky Moon Jia. However, it was better to be careful. He was carrying large amounts of Jingshi and talismans on his body and naturally had to be careful. Even more, the presence of the formation could not lie. No matter who was it that set up the formation, a person able to set up such a large formation wasn't a simple person. This one's group would like to borrow space to rest for a few days, he shouted. Welcome, thank you for your patronage, each person 100 pieces of third-grade Jingshi, a soft voice passed out of the formation. One person 100 piece of third-grade Jingshi. This was extortion. This definitely was extortion. The 10 guards instantly became angry. 100 pieces of third-grade Jingshi was enough to buy a pretty good third-grade talisman. The leader of the guards even had his flying sword in his hand. Hongyang still kept his calm. This price was very high, but it wasn't as though he could not accept it. The other was not afraid to call a high price, they definitely had something they relied on. All right. Hongyang did not hesitate in nodding. The other did not seem to be afraid that he would go back on his word. The big formation moved, and revealed a passage. I'll go first, the leader of the guards did not forget his duty, and walked at the very front. He had the highest cultivation of all the guards. Of the 10 guards, 3 were Ningmai, the other 7 were the peak of Zhuji. All of them acted as though they were facing a great enemy, their expressions nervous as they carefully proceeded into the passage. Chapter 200, Peddling. As he entered the passage, the shock in Hongyang's heart increased. This Jia River was the only passageway leading to Little Mountain Jia. He had crossed it so many times before that he had lost count. He remembered clearly this was the territory of Heart Lake Sword Sect and was guarded by a few disciples. He had had several interactions with these Heart Lake Sword Sect disciples. Every time he passed through he would give a few gifts to maintain a close relationship. He remembered those Heart Lake disciples had no interest in developing the Desolate Wood Reef, so the Desolate Wood Reef was always very bare. When did the Desolate Wood Reef become like this? As he landed from the passage of the formation, what he saw along the way was high defenses, heavy Jinji, so much that if they put 1 foot out of the border, they would instantly be killed by the formation. The appearing and disappearing sounds landed in everyone's eyes like an intangible killing intent. The group walked as though there was a sword at their backs, their bodies cold, hairs standing on end. Even the face of the guard leader went from bright to dimmed. He clearly was very wary. Such a big formation could not have been built in one day. The shock in Hongyang's heart increased. Did Heart Lake Sword Sect do this? In reality, from the perspective of a businessperson, Hongyang felt that constructing a restricted area here was a very profitable business. He decided to wait and see. 100 pieces of third-grade Jingshi per person was just a small number to him, but from the perspective of others, it was just a reckless toll. It did not seem like something a big sect like Heart Lake Sword Sect would do. What he was most afraid of was there would be no limit to the others' demands. Luckily, he had brought almost all the elite of the merchant house with him. Of the 10 guards, 3 were Ningmai experts, the others were all peak of Zhuji. As expected, when the world was in disorder anything could occur, Hongyang sighed. Welcoming him was a delicate and handsome youth and 3 golden armor guards. The youth had a friendly smile on his face. His cultivation was not high, just juji. Hong Yang's gaze landed on the three guards behind him, and he was stunned. Not just him, even the leader of the guards and the two other Ningmai guards changed expression. The three guards were completely covered in golden armor, only revealing their eyes. The three's gazes were cold and indifferent, without a hint of emotion. Their killing intent was tangible, each person was holding an exaggeratedly large broadsword that seemed designed to make people feel even more intimidated. Where did these three come from? The heart of the guard leader sunk to the bottom. The brutality revealed by the aura of the three golden armor guards surpassed any bandit he had ever encountered. All three made his heart move and feel a strong sense of danger. He knew what this meant. It meant that the cultivation of all three people were higher than him. Hong Yang's heart was even more stunned. The gap between his cultivation and the three golden armor guards was even larger, so he felt it even more strongly. Ningmai. These three were actually Ningmai. In an instant, he was able to judge the other was of uncommon origins. In Sky Moon Jia, Ningmai was the most powerful Xiaoxia that could be hired, and even then it was very difficult to hire them. The three Ningmai guards under his command had been sent by the merchant house. He had tried to hire his own but had never succeeded. His eyes landed on the three. The flying swords that the three golden armor guards were wearing, the golden ling armor covering their bodies, they were not ordinary. Your patronage is 100 pieces of third-grade jingsher per person. The youth's voice was not loud, refreshing and clear as the spring wind. Hong Yang refreshingly took out the jingsher he prepared and handed over, smiling and said, "What is this little brother called?" "Uncle can call me Gongsun Cha." Gongsun Cha smiled as he took the jingsher. Calculating the income today, the smile on his face became greater. "Oh, so it is little Gongsun brother." Hong Yang bowed with his hands, and pretended to be surprised. "Your sect is?" "This one has passed the desolate wood reef many times, and has never seen the island so prosperous. Your sect really is good at managing." Gongsun Cha smiled. "We are roaming Xiu, no sect." "Roaming Xiu?" Hong Yang almost spat blood. Was he kidding? The roaming Xiu of Sky Moon Jia, how could they have such power? Gongsun Cha pointed at a row of houses. "You can find a place to rest. No one will disturb you. If you need supplies, not far up ahead is a shop. Of course, the items will be a bit more expensive. You can rest, and leave at any time. However, if you wish to enter again, you will need to pay the fee again." Finishing, Gongsun Cha left. He was a very busy person. Seeing the other did not show signs of making more demands, Hong Yang's heart finally rested. He was transporting an astonishing number of talismans, and naturally was very nervous, being suspicious along the trip. They walked in the direction that Gongsun Cha had pointed in towards the houses. The houses were very simple, each yard made from normal rocks without any decoration, and no comfort to speak of. However, many of the houses were occupied. Hong Yang suddenly stopped. "Is it Longjin Sanren?" A middle-aged Xiaoxia drinking in the yard suddenly raised his head, joyful surprise on his face. "Storekeeper Hong." He hurriedly to stand and greet. Come in, I didn't think I would encounter Storekeeper Hong here, lucky." Hong Yang motioned for the guards to guard the outside and walked in with the leader of the guards. He smiled and said, "Sanren's relaxed attitude, this little brother has never been able to learn it." "Ha! Brother Hong always talks so well. Come, sit. Longjing Sanren said. Hong Yang was not courteous and sat down opposite Longjin Sanren. Longjin Sanren was one of his old acquaintances, and they had known each other before he had become the storekeeper and had kept in contact after that. Longjin Sanren was dedicated to cultivation. A decade ago, he had already broken through to Ningmai's second stratum. His present cultivation was unknown. Does Sanren know the history of the island owner? Hong Yang asked in a low voice. Haha, old brother must have just entered the island. Longzhen and Sanren seemed to have expected that Hong Yang would ask, and said with a smile. Old brother definitely would not be unfamiliar with the owner of the island. This island was originally the property of Heart Lake Sword Sect, and then it switched to Wukong Sword Sect. Their disciple, Zhuemo, was sent to guard this place. Didn't Wukong's Sword Sect move to Bright Wave Jie? Hong Yang could help but ask. Haha, Zhuemo does not belong to a sect now, so he is the owner of the island, Longzhen Sanren. Hong Yang stilled and then gasped, impossible. How can Wukong's Sword Sect abandon their core disciple? Even more, it is Zhuemo. The leader of the guards behind him also had a face full of disbelief. Such a talented disciple as Zhuemo, no sect would easily abandon him. I don't understand what had happened, but right now, the master of the island is undoubtedly Zhuemo. Longzhen Sanren suddenly remembered something. Speaking of it, old brother really came at a good time. Oh, how so? Hong Yang still hadn't recovered from the last shock and asked instinctively. This Zhuemo is really a genius. He astounded everyone by making the Golden Crow pill before. Now, somehow, he made Golden Crow fire. Longzhen Sanren sighed. Golden Crow fire. Hong Yang jumped in fright. 4th grade Golden Crow fire. Yes, that Golden Crow fire. Longzhen Sanren smiled, so I say that old brother really came at a good time. The news has not spread yet. Otherwise, countless people would have headed here already. 4th grade Golden Crow fire, Hong Yang muttered. Longzhen Sanren took a drink of tea. I heard the news when I encountered Bo Feng on the road. Pity that I have no power to purchase it. Old brother, you might not know, but the Black Wind bandits attacked this place, but they were all killed. He shook his head, sighing. I was dumbstruck when I heard this news. All killed. And it was the Black Wind bandits. If Wukong Sword Sect learned this, they would be so regretful. Zhuji unable to kill the Black Wind bandits, we have really wasted our lives. Just a few days earlier, he broke through to Ningmai. Such a genius, I have never heard of one like him. Hong Yang seemed to be struck by lightning, his entire head ringing. Longzhen Sanren had given him too much news, so much he needed time to digest it. They chatted for a little more before he bid farewell. He needed to digest all this. The next day, he found Gongsun Cha. I heard that the island is selling Golden Crow fire. This one wishes to buy. Gongsun Cha brought Hong Yang to Zhuemo. When Hong Yang saw Zhuemo, the stone in his heart landed. Zhuemo could be considered one of the most talented and famous youths in Sky Moon Jia, and he was skilled in making dan. His business reputation had been very good before. When he heard about the Golden Crow fire, he couldn't sit still. 4th grade Golden Crow fire was not something that he could buy when he wanted to. If he had a chance to buy it, his heart moved. If he could buy Golden Crow fire, it could be counted as a large achievement. When he returned to the merchant house, his status would rise. Also, the clever Hong Yang had other plans. Other than Golden Crow fire, Zhuemo's personal wealth was extremely large. This kind of person was the high-end customer that business people liked the most. You want to buy Golden Crow fire? Zhuemo looked at Hong Yang, his mood well. Finally, someone was coming to buy Golden Crow fire. Yes. Hong Yang said, can this one take a look at the true face of Golden Crow fire? The other's carefulness did not make Zhuemo feel displeasure. This meant that the other truly had interest in buying. He took out a mini box, opened it and pushed it in front of Hong Yang. A pure gold flame jumped in the box, the yang and domineering presence filled the room. Hong Yang was slightly excited. Golden Crow fire. As expected, it really was Golden Crow fire. And it was very pure. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Hong Yang asked, how does Mr. Zhuo plan on selling this? On the market now, golden crow fire of this quality, the price is usually about 2 pieces of 4th grade jingsha. Hong Yang's price was very just. However, Zhuo Mo, who heard the other meaning in Hong Yang's words, followed along and said, "Does storekeeper Hong have a suggestion?" Hong Yang knew the following was the most crucial time, and would test his skill as a salesperson. He seemed to have returned to those days as an apprentice. He was slightly excited. He said, "This one does not have much jingsha now, but have some interesting things that Mr. Zhuo might find interesting." Interesting things? Zhuo reacted very quickly. He hadn't thought that he would become the target of a sales pitch. However, he decided to see what the other could take out first. Chapter 201, Armed to the teeth. Zhuo was dazzled by the talismans in front of him. Noticing the change in Zhuo's eyes, Hong Yang was very proud. He took out a pair of silver wings the size of his palm. "Look, this pair of thunder-flowing light wings are intermediate 4th grade. It is the upgraded version of thunder wings. As fast as lightning and famed for its speed. This pair of thunder-flowing light wings was forged by Jindan experts. Other than its peerless speed, its consumption of Ling power was made to be very low. At full speed, it would use 1 jing of Ling power every 2 hours, and if it was at 80% of its speed, it would only use half a jing every 2 hours. Such a fine item, it only is 60 piece of 4th grade jingsha." Zhuo did not hesitate in nodding. "I'll take it. Do you want to taste the extreme speed?" Zhuo was too familiar with the advertisement for thunder wings. Even more, this was thunder-flowing light wings, an even better version. It was much faster. Lightning sparked around the palm-sized wings extremely beautifully. Hong Yang was joyous. Before he could speak, he heard Zhuo add, 4 pairs. 4 pairs. 240 pieces of 4th grade jingsha. Hong Yang felt like a blooming flower, a feeling of happiness spreading through his body. This trip was worth it. Big customer. Definitely a big customer. Look, the presents, the spending, this was the biggest whale among whales. Hong Yang was excited, completely excited. He perceptively discovered just how full Zhuo's wallet was. It was as though he was shot up with chicken's blood. He felt the blood in his body burning as though it was exploding. He suppressed the impulse to shout. He sounded the horn of battle. 10,000 appearances gloves, referring to everything in the universe. Low 4th grade, not extremely fine, but very practical. Wearing these gauntlets, it means having the power of 10,000, one sword strike will be able to break open a mountain, unable to be stopped. If it was just this, I would be ashamed to take it out. Its biggest benefit is it uses almost no Ling power. Even Juji can wear it. 20 pieces of 4th grade jingsha, a beautiful price. Buy. Putting it on to try, Zhuo did not hesitate in nodding. 4 pairs. He thought of the 3 golden armor guards wearing the gloves. Adding on their exaggerated red broadswords, they could just charge through his enemies. Zhuo couldn't help but be excited. 7-star sword boots, intermediate 4th grade, the 7-star step method is wondrous, unable to be predicted. As long as you are wearing it, you can easily avoid all kinds of attacks, your steps traceless, the best item for short-range movement. If they had offensive talismans, they wouldn't even be able to use a fraction of its power. However, the husbandry and butchery jade scrolls and life-saving talismans made the two smile. Especially Gong Sun Cha. After he received the white medal, it was hard to progress as jade scrolls were hard to find. Other than talismans, Zhuo had bought large amounts of materials from Hong Yang, especially some 4th grade materials. However, this furious shopping spree had emptied him of golden crow fire. But Zhuo did not care. He could gather golden crow fire at any time. It wasn't difficult for him. With this batch of talismans, to say of nothing else, their offensive power had multiplied. He had the confidence to face anyone under Jin Dan. However, what he felt demotivated by was the golden armor guards seemed born to fight. Compared to himself, they did not seem to need to practice to easily use the talismans to reach their full potentials. Sua Mo gaped. Deeply struck, Sua Mo could only slowly adjust. Like the 7-star sword boots, if he needed to activate the sword formation, he needed to do 7 steps after the other in the correct locations. When the fully armored golden armor guards appeared on the desolate wood reef the next day, they caused a small disturbance. Any Xianxia that saw them couldn't help but have a stunned expression. Hong Yang didn't dare to stay long, leaving the next day. Pu Yao coldly looked at the gradually shrinking black water lake. The black water lake was only a quarter of the size it had been originally. Those human-like monsters were continuously transporting black water from the lake to the altar. The old-fashioned and crude altar was now completely black without any glow. Almost there, Pu Yao muttered. He blew out black air. Those human-like monsters once again landed in the lake water. After that, he waved his sleeve. Large amounts of materials were added to the lake water, many of them ones that Sua Mo had bought from Hong Yang. The black lake water started to bubble, like a boiling pot of porridge. Pu Yao's right palm opened slightly, a red-black flame appeared at the center of his palm. His hand did not move, but the red-black flame suddenly turned into a fire dragon and charged at the altar. The red-black fire flamed as it surrounded the altar, the flames flickering and enchanting. Pu Yao inhaled deeply, his hands reaching out. His hands changed movements. His slightly closed bloody eyes suddenly widened, commanding lightly, "Rise." The altar that was shrouded in fire rose at command and started to fly towards the black lake, only slowly landing as it reached the center of the lake. As it carried the flames that were so red they were almost black, it floated at the center of the lake. Pu Yao's expression was solemn, his eyes focused, not daring to slip, as his hands changed shape again. It was like the fire was poured on oil, spreading across the surface of the black water. In a blink, the entire black water lake was shrouded in flame. Pu Yao finally released a breath. He reached out his hand, the black water lake dramatically shrinking until it became palm-sized. Then the mini lake flew into his hand, the surrounding flames silently burning. After being forged for many more months, the nether pool could form. A deep exhaustion came from his body. Pu Yao felt unspeakably tired and sighed lightly inside. The present him was so weak. Sua Mo's excitement had not faded. He had never bought so many talismans before, and so many 4th-grade talismans. The feeling of being so rich was so good. Not bad, you are at Ningmai. Pu Yao suddenly appeared, he seemed slightly exhausted. Then let's continue with the earth energy. Sua Mo felt as though a bucket of cold water was poured on his head. Drawing out earth energy. He finally understood what was extreme grief born of extreme joy. It was all right though, this had benefits for him, so Sua Mo comforted himself in this way. Pu Yao's actions were unusually fast. In a blink, the earth energy inside Sua Mo's body was cleanly swept away. Sua Mo dropped to the ground, paralyzed, his body occasionally convulsing. Pu Yao glanced at Sua Mo on the ground. His face showed pleasure, before he disappeared. Sua Mo's mind was blank. It was 4 hours later when his numb mind finally recovered. Why was the feeling this time was stronger than before? Was it a side effect of breaking through to Ningmai? Before, he had assumed that he had gradually adjusted to the pain of earth energy being forcibly drawn out, he hadn't thought the pain would suddenly increase. Without any preparation, Sua Mo instantly became a tragedy. A female stared at the large river in front of her. Behind her was a silent and solemn, well-organized troop. Have you found out? Yes. A middle-aged man said respectfully, the location of stars in daytime is sky moon Jia. It was not long ago, about a year ago. 1 year ago, the female sighed lightly. I'm very curious which Darren it is. The middle-aged man's eyes were filled with a fanatical heat. A Darren that could escape from the Yao forging tower, it definitely is a Darren that managed to survive the 1,000-year Great War. 1,000-year Great War, a long time ago. Miss. Nothing, I'm just reflecting. The female smiled. Our generation is very lucky. Yes. The middle-aged man couldn't help but be excited. Have there been any suspicious targets? The female asked. Not yet. The middle-aged male gave a realistic plan. We have already found the Jia rivers to sky moon Jia. We only need to lock the Jia rivers, and we will have plentiful time to slowly investigate. Alright, it is a stupid method. Yes. Our previous infiltrators were impeded by others, so, nothing, stupid methods are more effective sometimes. The female waved her hand. Yes. Glancing at the Jia River, the female said, depart. Yes. Chapter 202, Territory Intrusions. What Mo played with the beast service card in his hand, as a multicolored butterfly flew around him. Chen Yucheng named this multicolored butterfly Rainbow Mark Butterfly. It was the most outstanding Ling beast he had ever raised up until now. Mo could feel an extremely weak presence come from the Rainbow Mark Butterfly. The thoughts were very weak, and there were many images that were indistinct. This was a characteristic unique to low-level Ling beasts. The higher the grade of the Ling beast, the more intelligent it would be. High-level Ling beasts were not much different than Xiaoxia. This Rainbow Mark Butterfly was only 3rd grade, and its intelligence just forming. Naturally, there would be many messages that Mo could not understand. However, it could accurately understand Mo's orders and was very obedient. The beast pool had been constructed to make Jingxia. He had never thought that he wouldn't lack for Jingxia now. So the batch of Ling butterflies had been turned from a business product into for their own use. The Rainbow Mark Butterfly was the most outstanding of the 3 Ling butterflies. It had 3 spells: Rainbow Pupils, Illusion Poison, Poison Change. He ordered the Rainbow Mark Butterfly to cast the Rainbow Pupils. The Rainbow Mark Butterfly lightly fluttered its wings, a rainbow light landed on Mo's body. His eyes were suddenly covered in a layer of faint 5-colored light. Mo felt the world in front of him change. Everything he saw was gray-white. The silently masticating Rainbow Mark Butterfly communicated before Mo understood. The so-called rainbow pupil was to detect poison. It could detect the danger of poisonous items. Mo did not cultivate poison, so the spell was not very useful for him. The only place he could use it was in dan-making. Compared to Rainbow Pupil, Illusion Poison was much more interesting. Illusion Poison was to use poison to create illusion. Mo was very interested. He instantly thought of the uses for this spell. If he secretly fortified a few places of his formation with illusion poison, then no one would detect it. However, the spell most important to Mo was the 3rd spell, Poison Change. Rather than calling it a spell, Poison Change was more like a talent. According to Chen Yucheng's explanation, if he kept on feeding the Rainbow Mark Butterfly poison, especially high-grade poison, when it reached a certain level, it could cause the Rainbow Mark Butterfly to transform and enter a higher grade. As the grade increased, the intelligence of a Ling beast would increase, and there was a possibility of the addition of a spell. It was a pity that Mo did not have any interest in poison, much less high-grade poison. Suddenly, Mo smacked his forehead. How did he forget that? Didn't his inky black lava white fire have a deadly poison? That was the poison obtained by processing a 4th-grade inky black lotus seed. The grade of the inky black lotus fire was too low. Zhuemo had decided to use the golden crow fire as the primary one. It was perfect for him to split the fire apart. The poison for the rainbow mark butterfly, the fire for Lil Pagoda. Even though the grade of the inky black lava white fire was not high, but it was still a fire seed, and quite pure. But before that, Zhuemo still needed to do one thing, forge the blue ice sword. The blue icicle crystal could only be forged with a cold fire. The grade of the golden crow fire was higher, but the attribute was not correct. The blue icicle crystal sword billet was about half a chi long, its body shaped like a prism. When the light reflected on the facets of the prism, it was very beautiful. 3 days later, the blue ice sword took form. The entire body was like a blue icicle, the tip of the sword extremely sharp. The body of the sword was made out of countless facets. As it floated in the air, a mist naturally formed around the sword. Zhuemo's mind moved. Pew, the blue ice sword entered the ground, only leaving behind a sword-shaped hole. There was a circle of clear ice cracks around the hole. It could be seen just how cold it was. Zhuemo's forging skill was not high and the blue ice crystal was just lower 4th grade. The grade of the inky black lava white fire was also too low. He had barely managed to forge a 4th grade flying sword. He didn't care that much. The 5 essence sword set emphasized the cooperation between the different qualities of the flying swords. Taking apart the inky black lava white fire, however, had taken Zhuemo quite a bit of effort. The poison from the inky black lotus had long ago merged into the flame. Zhuemo did not have the strength at his cultivation level to take it apart. However, he thought of a clever solution: let Lil Pagoda deconstruct it. The present Lil Pagoda only needed a bit to break through to 4th grade, its control greatly increased. It could control how to decompose what was put into it. The inky black lava white fire was quickly taken apart. The inky black lotus poison was separated out. What surprised Zhuemo was that this ball of inky black lotus poison was an invisible substance. When he used Ling power to carefully surround this deadly poison, he was instantly alarmed. His Ling power was quickly consumed. As expected from a 4th grade inky black lotus poison. This discovery made him hesitate. Could the rainbow mark butterfly tolerate such a strong poison? But quickly, he could feel the rainbow mark butterfly's anticipation and joy. The rainbow mark butterfly lightly flapped its multicolored wings, and a circle of light surrounded the poison. The ring of light continuously shrunk until it disappeared. Zhuemo was slightly disappointed. A line of black had appeared on the wings of the rainbow mark butterfly, but there was no other change. Lil Pagoda absorbed the fire seed, but there were no signs of another breakthrough. Alright, he could not be too greedy, Zhuemo mumbled. He started to absorb the golden crow fire. The atmosphere of the desolate wood reef was nervous and fretful. Everyone's face was slightly heavy. A few days ago, several Xianxia had escaped from the Jie River. They had encountered a group of very strong Xianxia. That group killed everyone they saw. Many Xianxia didn't even have the time to flee before they were killed. Instantly, the desolate wood reef became tense. These injured Xianxia had no strength to fly over the endless ocean, and could only stay on the desolate wood reef. Those Xianxia that had originally planned to travel to Little Mountain Jie through the Jie River didn't dare to move recklessly, and waited to see what would happen. The number of Xianxia on the desolate wood reef increased, but no one dared to cause a disturbance. Other than the intimidation of the 3 golden armor guards, they also understood, if there really was a powerful enemy, the formation on the island was their strongest defense. Without the beast pool, Chun Yucheng was idle. His face was full of worry. There's more than 600 Xianxia on the island, and more than 20 Ningmai. If something happens, that wouldn't be good. Xixiang is also in seclusion, what are you afraid of? Gong Sun Cha was unconcerned and said heartlessly, worst case, we can just flee. What do you think the people in the Jie River are? killing everyone they see. They really have no regard for the law. Chen Yucheng was righteously indignant. Gong Sun Cha teased the gray butterfly and said lazily, who knows, probably a group of people who couldn't think things through. Suddenly, the crowd on the island shifted. The two instantly stopped what they were doing and stood up. Far away in the sky, there were many black dots. Chen Yucheng inhaled sharply, his face pale, voice trembling as he pointed at the black dots in the sky. What is that? Gong Sun Cha also was motionless at his spot with a shocked expression. The dense crowd of black dots flew at the desolate wood reef at astonishing speed like a black cloud rolling over the sky. With a suffocating presence, they silently moved to a distance 20 li from the desolate wood reef. Yao Ma, someone trembled out those two words. It was as though a spark had been thrown into a pot of oil. The deathly silent desolate wood reef suddenly exploded. Yao Ma, Chen Yucheng felt his legs sore and weak, dropping to the ground. There were hints of terror in Gong Sun Cha's eyes, but the terror was quickly changed to curiosity. Was this Yao Ma? It wasn't just him that had this thought. In reality, this thought uncontrollably flashed across many people's minds on the desolate wood reef. Other than the somewhat strange dark green skin, the Yao Ma in the sky didn't seem much different than Xianxia. On their foreheads, they all had a piece of crystal, the color and shape varied. Their bodies were mostly slender and were very handsome regardless of sex. This is Yao Ma. Wow! Gong Sun Cha sked. He rubbed his chin, oh, almost as handsome as me, that's not very good. However, he quickly became speechless. The Yao Ma in the sky quickly moved forward 3 li. Everyone was intimidated. People now found that the dark green-skinned Yao Ma in the sky were in well-organized ranks that seemed to have been measured with a ruler. During the flying process, the entire troop did not have any hint of disorder, they were so synchronized that it was frightening. When several dozen people were so, everyone would find it to be nothing, but when thousands of people were so organized, an invisible pressure formed. It was as if there was 1,000 catty rock on everyone's chest. All the noise stopped, like someone had cut their throats. Really the elite. Gong Sun Cha's eyes glowed as he muttered. He then looked in sympathy at the panicking Xianxia on the island, and couldn't help but sigh, and there go the rabble. The contrast between the two sides was too strong. Of the thousands of people on the other side, no one was speaking, it was deathly silent. The Xianxia on the island was panicking like a crowd of headless chickens. Prepare to run for your life, Gong Sun Cha said to Chen Yucheng. What about Xixiang? Chen Yucheng asked, his expression blank. Find him. Gong Sun Cha said. I'm here. At some unknown time, Zhuemo appeared behind the two of them. Escape, Gong Sun Cha spread his hands at Zhuemo grimaced. He hadn't thought that he would encounter this just after he came out of seclusion. He knew that Gong Sun Cha was right. Even though the island had 600 Xianxia, it was just a grab bag of random cultivators. Looking at the military troop that was so terrifyingly organized, a hint of helplessness rose in Zhuemo's heart. The difference in power was not something a formation could bridge. Is it really Yao Ma? Chen Yucheng was still somewhat lost. Gong Sun Cha looked in curiosity at Zhuemo and Yao, not Mo. Zhuemo nodded, mostly Ghost Attendant Yao and some Night Stalk Yao. Ghost Attendant Yao? Night Stalk Yao? Gong Sun Cha had an interested expression. To them, Yao Ma was a very distant monster. The most basic Yao are called Little Yao, about our Lianqi. The next level is Ghost Attendant Yao, like our Zhuji. The Night Stalk Yao are equivalent to our Ningmai, Zhuemo explained simply. That scared me. Then can't we hold this place? Chen Yucheng said excitedly. Gong Sun Cha shook his head but didn't speak. Zhuemo grimaced, probably not. Yao Ma emphasize killing and have endured fighting since they were born. They live more harshly than we do. Also, you can also see their organization. Our side only has scattered soldiers and heroes, we are not a match. Then what do we do? Chun Yuchang's little face became pale again. Flee. Suemo gritted his teeth and said hatefully. His heart was filled with sorrow. The good days of sitting and taking in money had reached an end. Chapter 203 Date Seed Ship, Miss, the position of this island is extremely good, it is perfect for guarding the Jie River, the middle-aged man said respectfully. Is that the formation of a xianxia? The female did not reply. She was staring at the hoop of light that was like a sun above the island. Yes, Mississippi. He opened his mouth, but perceptibly swallowed his words. Oh. The female said faintly, check first if there is any suspicious targets among them. If not, push them out. Yes. The middle-aged man instantly complied. You really are kind. A male beside the female said in a sarcastic tone. He was like a crane among the chickens, his entire person like a burning flame, a flame-red crystal on his forehead. Sweeping a glance at the rebellious male, the female was calm. Yan Feng, shut your mouth. Yan Feng smirked. The xianxia on this island are just rabble. Give me 500 troops, and I can sweep them clean. If you let them go, isn't it letting them off easy? The female was not moved. Our job is to find someone. Yan Feng suddenly became excited, Mu Shi, you forget that they are xianxia. Our enemy. The more we kill, the less enemies we have. Mu Shi's tone became cold, Sir Yan Feng, please watch your tone. You are speaking to your direct commander. If you overstep again, you will be treated according to military law. Yan Feng was so angry fire came out of his eyes. The last bit of intelligence allowed him to keep his control. He knew the woman in front of him would do as she said. The composition of Yao was extremely complex. There were many species. Different than the reproduction of humans, Yao were born from nature, formed from the Ling energy of the world. Like Mu Shi, she came from the largest clan of Yao, the Wood clan. They were all formed from flora. Yan Feng came out of desolate Western Mountain Sky Fire branch. The reproduction of the Fire clan was not as prosperous of the Wood clan. They did not have many Yao, but they were natural fighters, their personality explosive and brave. The Wood, Fire, Gold, Water, and Earth clans were the 5 largest clans of the Yao, but there were other little clans as many as sand. Due to the abundance of Yao, every decade, some small clans would be born. Due to this, Yao society was very accepting and very transparent. This type of transparent and complete government was like an enormous squid that reached its tentacles into every corner. It was also this governance that had born from countless great minds and strong elders that allowed the Yao to quickly recover. For example, Mu Shi was the most accomplished of the youths of the Wood clan. Even though her cultivation was not outstanding, but she had started her duties very early. Yan Feng rarely found an opponent that could match his offensive power and was even stronger than Mu Shi, but due to his infighting within the ranks, he was punished and placed under Mu Shi's command. In reality, the two once had been classmates, but they had always been at odds. Suemo found he actually wasn't nervous. He was slightly surprised. It seemed that fighting and killing really hardened people. However, Pu Yao's words instantly made him nervous. They have come to find you. Find me? Suemo gaped. Stars in daytime, you alerted them. Pu Yao was very calm. This made the nervousness in Suemo's heart decrease. Stars in daytime, what does it do? Suemo asked a question that had been hidden in his heart for a long time. Not much. Some strong Yaoma would try to borrow the power of the stars to recover from serious wounds, and this forms the stars in daytime. Pu Yao said. It was you. Pu Yao smiled coldly, none of my business. He then frowned. But these things are slightly irritating. Aren't you a Yao? Should you be of the same kind as them? Suemo couldn't really grasp Pu Yao's attitude. However, if it wasn't Pu Yao, who was it? Was it the gravestone? Pu Yao did not like Xiaoxia, Suemo could understand this, but he could not understand that Pu Yao didn't even like the Yao. They don't have any connection to me. Pu Yao's face was cold. Suemo saw that Pu Yao didn't seem to want to mention this matter, and perceptively changed the topic. Do you have any good suggestions? Your luck seems pretty good. The arrivals are the Wood clan. Pu Yao glanced at the organized ranks of Yao troops in the sky. They don't like fighting. Wood clan. Suemo was very curious. Suemo might have openly spoke about the little Yao before, but that was buying and selling at the same time. Suemo was very unfamiliar with Yamo. Seeing that he could not avoid a conflict with the Yamo, it was beneficial for him to know a bit more. A large clan, but it has many cadet branches. Formed from flora. Pu Yao introduced shortly. Oh, Suemo nodded, not understanding. What was formed from flora? But he knew that Pu Yao definitely did not have the patience to explain. Suddenly, Suemo detected a strong consciousness ripple. He couldn't help but jump. Such a strong consciousness. The consciousness ripple came from the other side and swept the sky above the entire desolate wood reef. Before this, Suemo had been very confident in his consciousness. He had almost never encountered a Xiaoxia who had a stronger consciousness than he did. But the strength of this consciousness was far above his. They are searching for you. Such a pity, just Night Stalk Yao, they believe they have the skill. Pu Yao smirked. He seemed to understand what Suemo was thinking. It's very normal. They only cultivate the consciousness, it isn't something a half-ass like you can compare to. Pu Yao's interest was unknowingly stirred. Yao cultivate the consciousness so the division for spiritual power is much finer than the Xiaoxia. Star Fire, Manifestation, Spirit Seed, Yin Spirit, Yao Mansion, 6 Revolutions, and Sky Channels. You are just at Manifestation. Among them, the most powerful have finished Spirit Seed. Even though their spirit is weak, but it can easy to kill you. Manifestation. When the starfire is full, it manifests, seed born in the heart to become planted in the spirit births the Yin spirit opens the Yao Mansion, spiritual manifestation. Oh, your leaf hand is a manifestation. The consciousness can become tangible? Suemo asked. Of course, it's so simple, do you really need to think about it? Pu Yao's face was full of disdain. However, you just entered manifestation, you're very far off from spirit seed. What is called seed born in the heart? Suemo couldn't help but ask, his head bloated. You'll know when it is time. Pu Yao had used up his patience. Then now. Solve it yourself. Pu Yao said impatiently before disappearing. They are going to attack. Gongsun Cha pulled Suemo back. The attacking posture of the other size was so obvious even an idiot could see. Suemo couldn't help but become nervous. Pulling Gongsun Cha and Chun Yucheng, he pushed his voice low, prepare to escape. Where? Chun Yucheng's face was puzzled. Gongsun Cha suddenly opened his mouth, towards the Jie River. The Jie River? Little Mountain Jie. Suemo was very surprised, isn't that heading for the net? The endless ocean is vast and borderless. We need to fly multiple months to see land, there is no place to hide. Gongsun Cha was very calm, a hint of heat in his eyes. When it's time, these people will all scatter. We'll go the opposite way and break through. They definitely wouldn't have thought of it. They just came from Little Mountain Jie, Little Mountain Jie definitely has fallen. If we go to Little Mountain Jie, we have no escape. Chen Yucheng was frightened by Gong Sun Cha's suggestion, so frightened he woke up. This is not certain. Gong Sun Cha shook his head. If little mountain Jie has fallen, what would come definitely wouldn't just be this little amount of Yao. This is a little. Chen Yucheng pointed at the organized and solemn Yao army in the sky, and shouted. To us, it seems like a lot. But if they want to attack Sky Moon Jie, it is far too few, Gong Sun Cha said quickly. Sui Mo instantly reacted. You mean they are a little troop that snuck in? Possible. Gong Sun Cha said. What did they sneak in for? I don't know, they probably have a target. Sui Mo suddenly thought of what Pu Yao had said. Did these people really come to find him? No, to find the Yaoma of the stars in daytime. He continued to weigh the choices in his heart. Truthfully, Gong Sun Cha's suggestion was very dangerous. No, it was extremely dangerous. But Sui Mo felt that the success of that suggestion was very likely. From this, it could be seen that he was in support of Gong Sun Cha's suggestion. Chose which one? He was just a little Xiozha that had just broken through to Ningmai and hadn't seen much. Facing a choice that would determine life and death, he couldn't help but hesitate. Yet the other didn't give the time to hesitate. The sky above the other side's troop was suddenly dark. Strong Ling power ripples were like a harsh wind that swept past. Damn it! Sui Mo jumped in fright. The other side was going to attack. The Ling power ripples passing through the air were the same as Yang Fiend hard lightning, but the terrifying presence it gave off was hundreds of times stronger. He didn't doubt that their attack would flatten all of Desolate Wood Reef. If he didn't run now, when could he run? He grabbed Gong Sun Cha and Chen Yucheng, not caring for anything else, and suddenly jumped into the water. A gold light flashed, and the Buddha sound hoop landed in Sui Mo's bosom, the presence of the formation on the Desolate Wood Reef weakening. The Desolate Wood Reef instantly exploded. He ran. Sui Mo ran. Run! Everyone, run! At this time, with a large sound, a bolt of lightning twisted and struck the Desolate Wood Reef. Dong! A muffled sound hit everyone's heart. Those Xiozha with weak cultivations bled from their mouths and nose. Everyone couldn't help but turn their head. The Desolate Wood Reef with its layers of formations was like paper in front of the lightning, cleanly wiped out. More than 10 of the Xiozha that moved too slowly were swept by the after ripples and torn to countless pieces, not even having the time shout before their souls were destroyed. In the ocean, Sui Mo didn't have it good either. The blood inside his body was roiling, his Ling power almost spiraled out of control. Gong Sun Cha and Chen Yucheng's faces were pale, the power of the one attack was so powerful that it even passed into the ocean. At the border of life and death, Sui Mo became calm. A date seed appeared on his hand, a talisman ship was carved on it. This date seed ship had been taken from Nan Ming Zi's body. However, it required too much Ling power, so he hadn't found out how to use it. In seclusion this time, after finishing forging the 5 essence sword set, Sui Mo had spent a lot of effort on the talismans that he did not understand. He hadn't expected that he found some methods, and including this date seed boat. At this time, he didn't dare to hold anything back, the Ling power in his body furiously flooding towards the date seed boat. A little date red wooden boat with an old aura appeared in front of everyone. Sui Mo's hand moved. They felt the scene in front of them blur and then they were inside the ship. The ship was dry and clean. The water outside the ship seemed to be stopped by an invisible power, unable to enter. Sui Mo hurriedly directed the date seed ship to sink to the bottom. The thick water could stop the search from the other's consciousness. If they could flee to a place that the other could not detect them, they would be temporarily safe. Chapter 204 Improvement. The date seed ship submerged at a fast rate. In a blink, it had reached 10 li under the surface. Through the windows on the ship, the outside was pitch black. The surroundings were silent, the noise from the outside was completely blocked. Everyone finally relaxed. The Yao army used one attack to destroy any of the hopes they had left. Silly Bird shook the water off. She looked like the chicken in soup broth, with all of the drooping features. Even the proud Silly Bird was scared half to death by the hard lightning that had come from the sky and became much more docile. When Zuemo had come out of seclusion, he had taken Silly Bird and the others with him. Chun Yuqing collapsed on the ground, heaving. By comparison, Gong Sun Cha was much more composed, but there was still a hint of fear lingering in his eyes. Of everyone, the only ones that could truly maintain their calm were the 3 golden armor guards. As usual, they held their swords and stood like statues. Zuemo had recovered from the nervousness. Seeing everyone was complete and whole, his mood became much better. Just having escaped death, no one in the ship had any interest in talking, all of them catching their breaths and calming their minds. After a while, Zuemo found his mind had relaxed greatly and stood up, and began inspecting the date seed ship. During his seclusion, even though he had figured out how to activate the date seed ship, but he hadn't studied it. Right now, the date seed ship was their life-saving talisman, he didn't dare to leave it up to chance. He walked around the cabin of the ship, closely inspecting it. Chun Yuqing and Gong Sun Cha saw his actions and perceptively chose not to speak. This was. Zuemo carefully inspected the formations carved on the date seed ship and was very shocked. A Jingshi talisman. The date seed ship was a 4th-grade talisman, and it was even a rare Jingshi talisman. Jingshi talismans were talismans that could use Jingshi as a source of power. Those were usually large-sized talismans. The 1,000-wing boat that Zuemo had seen in Dongfu was a classical example of a Jingshi talisman. Historically, only large sect would forge Jingshi talismans. The materials that were needed were not something a normal Xianxia could afford. There were some Jingshi talismans for single-person use, but not many. Compared to the Ling power inside Jingshi, the Ling power inside Xianxia was much purer and easier to control. This date seed ship was a Jingshi talisman. It could carry 100 Xianxia, able to fly either in air or in the water. Zuemo's interest was stirred up. This was the first time he had seen a Jingshi talisman. He instantly started to study the formations on the ship. Jingshi talismans were talismans where formations were used most purely. Xianxia only had to make some simple commands, and it could work on its own. In a short period of time, he found the locations to put in Jingshi. The cabin was empty, and did not even have tables or chairs. The place to insert the Jingshi was on the ceiling. The ceiling of the cabin had a depiction of the Big Dipper, the 7 stars connected. Each star was the place to put in Jingshi. Zuemo took out 7 third-grade Jingshi from his ring to insert in the positions of the Big Dipper. When he shoved the last piece of Jingshi in, everyone felt the cabin light up, a date-colored red light emanated from the ship. Wow, Jingshi talisman. Gong Sun Cha was surprised. A Jingshi talisman that I got from Nanming Zi. Zuemo stared at the formations on the ship, calculating inside without turning his head to answer. Through the consciousness leaf hand, he could clearly see the seals running through the ship. The more he saw, the more admiration he had. Before this, he had never seen a Jingshi talisman before, so he never had seen Jingshi talisman formations before. The formations were like a gigantic mesh going through the entire date seed ship like they were the channels of the ship. Ling power flowed out from the 7 Jingshi into the channels and activated the formation. He quickly found the differences between the date seed ship and the talismans he had studied before. The Ling power that came out of the Jingshi was very steady. Normal talismans consumed the Ling power of Xianxia, the Ling power would have a variety of changes and would not be so steady. There were advantages and disadvantages to both methods. Jingshi talismans did not consume the Ling power of the Xianxia. As long as there was Jingshi, it could keep working. The disadvantage was that its uses were set, and it was less flexible to adjusting to sudden changes. Normal talismans were the exact opposite. Due to consuming the Ling power of the Xiuzhe, it could not compare in how long Jingshi talismans could be used. However, they could do many things and were very good at adjusting to sudden changes. Zhuo Mo's heart suddenly moved. If the two advantages could be put together, that would be great. Once the idea popped up into his head, it could not be erased. After studying for a while, he started to actually ponder if the flash of inspiration he had was realistic or not. The space inside the date seed ship was enough for him to set up large amounts of formations. The smaller the space was, the harder it was to set up formations. Forging experts could set down multiple formations in a flying sword the size of a finger. Zhuo Mo was far from reaching that level. Space was very important for him. The bigger the ship was, the easier it was for him to make modifications. There were a total of 3 formations on the date seed ship. One was a space formation, one was a Ling shield formation, the last was a water movement formation. Zhuo Mo paid more attention to the Ling shield formation. Its defensive ability was average. He decided to change the micro-light formation to a 7 bright micro-light formation. Zhuo Mo only needed to put 7 bright light formation into the micro-light formation, and the defensive power of the shield would increase by at least 50%. This technique of interlocking child formations was something he had comprehended from the Sky Ring Moon Chime formation. The structure of the bright light formation was simple and easy to carve, so Zhuo Mo quickly finished the 7 bright micro-light formation. The Ling shield over the ship gradually changed, the light becoming more intense and the shield thicker than it had been before. Zhuo Mo nodded in satisfaction. It seems his skill in making formations had improved once again. Before, this wouldn't have been so simple. Strengthening the Ling shield mean that the consumption of Ling power would increase correspondingly. However, Zhuo Mo did not worry about this. Right now, he lacked for everything except Jingshi. Gu has lots of Jingshi. He suddenly hit his head. Right, how did he forget his greatest advantage? Chun Yucheng and Gongsun Cha were frightened by Zhuo Mo's action. The two exchanged looks of puzzlement. Jingshi. Right now, he had piles of Jingshi. Before, he had been thinking of carving an offensive formation on the ship that could be controlled by a person. That way, they didn't need to leave the ship, but they could fight against their enemies. When Zhuo Mo realized his advantage, he suddenly reacted. He had made a mistake. Since it was hard to control Jingshi talismans precisely, rather than think of ways to increase the control over it, it was better to give the talisman a formation that did not need to be controlled, like a cloud lightning net. He only needed it to protect the ship. As to increasing the maneuverability of the Jingshi talisman, he could slowly study it. The high consumption of the cloud electrical lightning net was nothing for Zhuo Mo, who wanted to keep his life. The more he thought, the cleverer he found the idea. Even though there were still big gaps, but it was the most realistic plan at present. No matter what, his little life came first. He took out a large pile of materials and started to carve formations inside the cabin. What is Xixiang doing? Chun Yucheng asked. Gongsun Cha looked over. I don't understand, but he seems to be setting up formations. We should run, not setting up formations now. Chun Yucheng said hurriedly. I don't know, Gongsun Cha was also puzzled. He could see what Xixiang was generally doing. Even though he didn't know why Xixiang was putting up formations now, but he believed in Xixiang's judgment. Currently, the only thing he was so shocked by was the fact that Xixiang seemed to be playing with the Jingshi talisman. Could Xixiang modify Jingshi talismans? He knew was much harder to modify talismans than to remake them. After a talisman was successfully forged, it was one complete entity and had reached an equilibrium. Modifying was equivalent to first breaking the equilibrium and then setting a new equilibrium. Had Xiang's skills with formations reached such a level? The golden armor guards stood silently. Silly Bird had recovered from the fright, raising her bird head and stepping her unique bird walk. Suemo was very careful. Bright light formation was only an enhancing formation, and did not have much effect on the equilibrium of the talisman. However, Cloud Lightning Net was a third-grade formation. It was very strong and needed large amounts of Ling power. Suemo needed to add a few more channels to conduct Ling power to satisfy the Cloud Lightning Net. The Cloud Lightning Net was not difficult for Suemo. The difficulty laid in setting the seals to channel the Ling power. The formations on the date seed boat before had been very complete. In order to add more seals to increase Ling power pathways, he needed to change the entire structure. This was the most difficult part. If he wasn't careful, he could most likely cause the Ling power pathways to intersect and then collapse. Suemo was very clear about this, so he continuously modeled it in his head before proceeding. 4 hours later, he finally thought it through and started to move. What he did first was increase the number of Jingxia. The Ling power expenditure of Cloud Lightning Net was very large. 7 pieces of Jingxia was not enough to satisfy its needs. Suemo added another 21 pieces of Jingxia. On the ceiling of the ship cabin, 28 stars shone. To save his life, Suemo did not care how much Jingxia he had to spend. Right after, he started to set up the Cloud Lightning Net, and added more Ling power channeling seals. This modification took 12 hours. When he finished, he was exhausted. However, he finally finished. Hiss hiss. Sounds came from the date red Ling shield. Immediately after, countless fine lines of miniature lightning appeared on the surface of the Ling shield, swimming like little snakes. Fine lightning appeared at astounding speed and gathered. In the blink of an eye, a net appeared on the Ling shield. A net constructed of arm-thick lightning. It was like a silver net had covered all of the date seed ship. The lightning net slightly trembled, the sound slowly weakening until the hisses had disappeared. What was wondrous was that, even though they were in the water, the lightning net on the Ling shield showed no signs of dissipating, but was as dense as any other object, silently covering the Ling shield. The presence of the date seed ship instantly changed. There's many ways to play, like one-on-one, or many against many. Pu Yao seemed to suddenly sink into his memories, refocusing after a while. I remember it was quite fashionable back then. You have those? Suemo looked suspiciously at Pu Yao. No. Pu Yao shook his head. The most important part is the rules. It is very easy to make them. He threw a ball of light at Suemo. Here, these are the rules for all kinds of war chess games that I played before, and how to make them. When did you become this kind? Suemo's gaze became even more suspicious, but his hands were not slow at all, rapidly catching the ball of light. I don't want you to die this quickly. Pu Yao looked scornfully at Suemo before disappearing. The date seed ship silently slid along the bottom in the pitch-black water. For everyone, this was a very long period of boredom. Chen Yuqing seemed to be accustomed to this kind of boredom. He continued to busy himself in his experiments. Suemo occasionally took out the golden crow fire. He seemed to be forging something. So boring. Gongsun Cha yawned. He seemed to be the only person that didn't have anything to do. He had thought about teasing Silly Bird to relieve his boredom, but Silly Bird ignored him, proudly strutting her bird walk in the cabin. Lil Black climbed around the cabin without exhaustion. Lil's pagoda floated in the air, spinning in its spot. The 3 golden armor guards were like 3 statues, not having moved a finger in days. Originally, Gongsun Cha had been worried they might meet some water element Ling beasts. In the legends, there were many terrifying Ling beasts in the endless ocean. However, their luck seemed to be exceptional and they traveled smoothly. But these days were really so bland. Done, Suemo suddenly stated, making Gongsun Cha jump in fright. He crowded over. What's done? What is this? Chess. Something called a war chess, Suemo said uncertainly. I don't know if I made it correctly. Come, let's try. Gongsun Cha, so bored he had almost fallen asleep, instantly jumped up. Okay. Suemo took out a jade scroll, recording down some of the rules that Pu Yao gave him and threw it to Gongsun Cha. Interesting. Gongsun Cha took the jade scroll. After a look, he became alert. Suemo also started to read the rules. Reading it in detail, he was instantly frightened. Fuck. This was that complicated. The dense paragraphs of rules made his head feel numb. He heard Gongsun Cha's voice full of enthusiasm. This bit is interesting, yes, oh, I understand. Suemo could only force himself to keep reading. An hour later, when Suemo's eyes were unfocused and his brain faint, he suddenly heard Gongsun Cha say, so interesting, so interesting. It's really too interesting. Suemo raised his head in shock. He saw Gongsun Cha look excitedly at him, and say, let's begin. If I know there was something as fun as this, I wouldn't have learned how to butcher. What Suemo forged was puppet chess. It was simpler. The size of the Seal Soldier battle board was bigger, requiring better skill at forging, and had more complex rules. Basically, puppet chess was made from a set of little illusions. In a circle 1 zhang wide, miniature mountains and rivers were perfectly depicted. There were even clouds in the sky that slowly changed. Suddenly, these white clouds started to rain. Under the rain, the water in the river suddenly grew. A Shilja wearing Taoist robes suddenly charged into the sky from the river, slowly scanned the surroundings. Seeing there was not anything, the person went back into the river. Exquisite. Truly too exquisite. Gongsun Cha gaped, his eyes changing from excited to scorching. Suemo was also shocked by such exquisiteness. Even though he had made it from beginning to end, but he had never thought of the result of the end product. This wasn't some chessboard, it was like a complete little world. Everything inside would naturally cycle on their own. So wondrous. Suemo's mind became blank. Quick, how to play? Gongsun Cha urged. Suemo refocused and handed him a piece of third-grade Black Days crystal. Put your mind into it. He also took up a piece of Black Days crystal and flooded it with his consciousness. He felt the scenery in front of his eyes change, and he seemed to be looking from the sky. His eyes unconsciously looked down. Yao. 9 Yao were arranged in an organized square. He could clearly feel the connection between him and the 9 Yao. He was even able to use the eyes of any of the Yao to see everything in the surroundings. At the same time, the information of the 9 Yao flowed through his mind. His mind moved, and a Yao suddenly stepped 3 paces forward, leaving the troop. He instantly controlled it to do many strange and awkward poses. So interesting. Very interesting. Suemo was in shock. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.